Darkness fills the sky long before the first shape appears. There is no music yet, only a distant hum, soft and endless, like wind moving across an empty world. Then slowly, almost carefully, the moon emerges from the blackness above Earth. Silent, pale, familiar. Humanity has looked at that same object for thousands of years without truly stopping to ask the simplest question of all. Why is it there in exactly that way? Most people grow up believing the moon is ordinary, a natural companion circling Earth through the cold mechanics of gravity. But the deeper scientists studied it, the stranger it became. The moon is unusually large compared to the planet it orbits. No other rocky world in the solar system possesses a moon so massive in proportion to itself. Even more unsettling is its position in the sky. By extraordinary coincidence, the moon appears almost the exact same size as the sun when viewed from Earth, creating perfect total eclipses. For a brief moment, the dark surface of the moon covers the blazing face of the sun with impossible precision. Astronomers often describe this as chance, yet chance begins feeling different when enough strange details gather together in one place. Without the moon, Earth itself may have become unstable long ago. Scientists believe the moon helps regulate the planet's rotation, moderates the oceans through tides, and stabilizes the conditions that allowed complex life to emerge. In many ways, life as humanity knows it may exist because the moon exists exactly where it does. Ancient civilizations sensed something unusual long before modern astronomy appeared. Across deserts, forests, mountains, and coastlines, people looked upward and saw more than a glowing object in the night sky. The moon shaped calendars, rituals, migrations, harvests, and beliefs about destiny itself. Some cultures feared it, others worshipped it. Many believed it carried influence over the human mind. Even now, traces of those beliefs survive quietly beneath modern life, hidden inside language, superstition, and instinct. Familiarity has made the moon appear harmless. Humanity sees it so often that its presence no longer feels mysterious. But scientists themselves admit the moon is unusual. Some describe it as one of the strangest objects in the known solar system. Its origin remains debated even after decades of research. Certain lunar rocks appear older than expected. Seismic experiments conducted during the Apollo missions produced vibrations that behaved in ways researchers did not fully anticipate. Again and again, the moon resists simple explanation. And perhaps that is what makes it unsettling. The moon hangs above humanity every night, like something accepted before it was understood. Entire civilizations rose beneath its light. Empires crossed oceans guided by it. Ancient people built monuments aligned to its movements across the heavens. Yet, despite all the centuries spent watching it, humanity still cannot explain every detail of how the moon formed, why it appears so perfectly placed, or why it influences Earth so profoundly. The deeper the story unfolds, the stranger the silence around it begins to feel. Because the moon may be the most familiar object in the night sky, and the least understood. And somewhere far back in human memory, long before telescopes or modern science, there may have been people who questioned its true nature far more deeply than humanity does today. Modern society often treats mystery as something temporary, as though every unanswered question will eventually surrender beneath technology and time. Yet the moon continues resisting that certainty. The closer humanity moved toward it, the less ordinary it seemed. Astronauts describe the lunar surface as unnaturally silent, almost disconnected from reality itself. Photographs captured endless grey landscapes that felt ancient beyond comprehension. Nothing moved there, nothing lived there. And still, generation after generation, people continued staring upward with the same quiet feeling that something about the moon was incomplete, as though humanity had inherited an object older, stranger, and more important than anyone fully realized. A presence hidden inside familiarity, waiting patiently above Earth while humanity learned to question it. Long before observatories, satellites, or written science, human beings watched the night sky with a level of attention modern civilization rarely experiences anymore. In deserts untouched by electric light, beneath cold mountain air and endless fields of stars, ancient people observed the moon carefully enough to build entire systems of meaning around it. They tracked its cycles, aligned temples to its movements, and passed stories about it from generation to generation. Yet hidden inside many of those stories is something unexpected. A strange possibility appears again and again across cultures separated by oceans and centuries. Some ancient traditions speak of a time before the moon existed at all. In parts of ancient Greece, there were references to people called the Proselenes, a mysterious name that translates loosely to before the moon. Certain legends suggested humanity remembered an earlier sky, one untouched by lunar light. Far from Greece, tribes in Africa carried stories describing a dramatic change in the heavens long ago. In parts of Mesoamerica, myths spoke of celestial battles that transformed the night sky and introduced new lights above Earth. Ancient Mesopotamian texts described gods descending from the heavens, shaping order from chaos beneath unfamiliar stars. Individually, these stories sound like mythology. Together, they begin feeling strangely connected. The similarities do not prove the moon arrived suddenly in human history. Most historians would reject such an idea immediately. Yet the repetition itself raises a quieter question. Why did so many civilizations preserve memories of altered skies, celestial conflict, or a younger moon? Human cultures often create myths to explain natural events, but some researchers believe mythology may serve another purpose as well. It may preserve fragmented memory. The thought changes the atmosphere of the story entirely. Suddenly, ancient myths no longer feel distant or symbolic alone. They begin resembling echoes carried across enormous stretches of time, distorted through generations of storytelling, but rooted in experiences people once believed were real. Fires burned outside stone temples, while priests recited stories beneath lunar eclipses. Travelers crossed deserts guided by moonlight, while repeating legends inherited from ancestors they never knew. Across centuries, humanity continued preserving certain patterns, without fully understanding why those patterns endured. Even ancient astronomers occasionally hinted at unsettling possibilities. Some believed civilization itself was far older than official chronologies claimed. Others suspected catastrophic events erased earlier chapters of human history, leaving only fragments hidden inside oral tradition and mythological symbolism. If that were true, then stories about the moon might not represent fantasy alone. They could represent damaged memory, surviving in symbolic form long after the original context disappeared. Across isolated islands and forgotten valleys, the same patterns continued appearing in stories about the moon. It was rarely described as ordinary. Sometimes it arrived after chaos. Sometimes it followed fire in the sky. Sometimes it appeared alongside warnings about floods, darkness, or collapsing worlds. None of these traditions match perfectly, yet they circle around ideas often enough to create discomfort. The human mind searches for patterns, but patterns become difficult to ignore when they survive across continents without connection through centuries. And perhaps that is what makes these myths difficult to dismiss completely. The moon already feels unusual through the lens of modern science, but viewed through the eyes of ancient humanity, it becomes something even stranger. Not merely an object in the sky, but a presence deeply connected to destiny, fear, cycles of destruction, and the structure of reality itself. The people who watched it thousands of years ago did not separate astronomy from spirituality the way modern civilization does. To them, the sky carried meaning. Every shift above Earth mattered. The deeper these forgotten stories are examined, the more another possibility begins to emerge quietly beneath them all. Maybe ancient people questioned the moon more seriously than modern humanity ever has. And if civilizations long before recorded history sensed something unusual about it, then perhaps modern science has unknowingly uncovered evidence pointing toward the same unsettling conclusion. The ancient stories fade slowly into silence, replaced by a different world entirely. Steel launch towers rise against black skies. Computers glow inside control rooms. Voices speak calmly through static-filled radios, while rockets leave Earth for the first time in human history. Mythology gives way to science. Yet strangely, the deeper science explored the moon, the more the old unease returned. By the time astronauts reached the lunar surface, scientists expected the moon to behave like every other rocky body studied in the solar system. Instead, certain experiments produced results that felt unexpectedly strange. During the Apollo missions, astronauts intentionally crashed discarded lunar modules into the moon, so researchers could measure seismic activity beneath the surface. What happened next surprised them. The vibrations lasted far longer than expected. Some seismic readings continued for nearly an hour. Researchers described the moon as reacting almost like a bell, reverberating through its interior in ways difficult to compare with Earth. Scientists later explained these effects through differences in lunar composition and dryness, but the phrase remained embedded in public imagination. The moon did not merely absorb impact naturally, it rang. Even now, decades later, that detail continues lingering in discussions about lunar mysteries because emotionally, it feels wrong. Solid worlds are not supposed to behave that way. And the anomalies did not end there. The moon possesses magnetic remnants scattered across its crust, despite lacking a strong global magnetic field today. Certain lunar regions contain unexplained concentrations of radioactive material beneath the surface. Some areas produce heat signatures researchers still study carefully. There are also strange inconsistencies involving density deep inside the moon itself. Compared to Earth, the lunar core appears unusually small, leading some scientists to describe the moon as oddly lightweight for its size. Individually, none of these mysteries prove anything extraordinary. Science often encounters incomplete information. Yet together, the anomalies create a growing sense that the moon resists easy explanation at nearly every level. Even its orbit appears strangely fortunate. The moon stabilizes Earth with remarkable precision. Without it, the planet's axial tilt might fluctuate dramatically over long periods of time, potentially creating chaotic climate instability. Seasons could shift unpredictably. Environmental conditions necessary for complex life may never have remained stable long enough for civilization to emerge. The relationship between Earth and the moon feels balanced with extraordinary delicacy, almost as though the two objects were designed to function together. Astronomers usually describe this balance as natural coincidence shaped through billions of years of gravitational interaction. Yet some researchers quietly admit the Earth-Moon system appears statistically unusual compared to much of what has been observed elsewhere in the solar system. Once again, the discomfort comes not from one impossible detail, but from many precise details existing together. And beneath all of it remains the largest mystery of all. Humanity still cannot explain exactly how the moon formed. The dominant theory suggests a massive object collided with the young Earth billions of years ago, ejecting material that eventually became the moon. The explanation fits many observations, yet important questions remain unresolved. Certain isotopic similarities between Earth and lunar rock appear almost too perfect. Other details involving composition and orbital mechanics continue generating debate among researchers. Multiple theories exist, but none solve every anomaly completely. That uncertainty changes the emotional atmosphere surrounding the moon entirely. Because science is often most unsettling when it admits it does not fully know the answer. The moon hangs above Earth as something both familiar and unfinished. Ancient civilizations sensed its strangeness through myth and symbolism. Modern science encounters the same unease through measurements, data, and unanswered questions. Different languages, different centuries. Yet somehow, the same feeling remains. The deeper humanity studies the moon, the stranger it becomes. And with every unanswered anomaly, another question begins slowly emerging from the silence. If the moon's history is still incomplete, then perhaps the moment humanity finally touched its surface revealed far more than the public was ever prepared to understand. By the middle of the 20th century, the moon no longer belonged only to poets, priests, and ancient storytellers. It had become a target. Nations stared upward with growing urgency while rockets rose from deserts and coastlines in explosions of fire bright enough to turn night briefly into day. Officially, the world called it the space race, a political struggle between rival superpowers competing for technological dominance during the Cold War. But beneath the speeches, propaganda, and flags planted into television broadcasts, something deeper seemed to drive humanity forward. The rush toward the moon happened with astonishing speed. For thousands of years, human civilization remained trapped beneath Earth's atmosphere. Then suddenly, within only a few decades, humanity moved from fragile aircraft to machines capable of crossing the void between worlds. Scientists worked endlessly inside sealed laboratories, while engineers calculated impossible trajectories through silence and vacuum. Entire nations poured unimaginable resources into reaching a place ancient civilizations once treated with fear and reverence. And quietly, behind the public triumph, another atmosphere began forming. The control rooms of the 1960s carried a strange emotional tension, difficult to explain fully now. Radio transmissions echoed through darkened chambers, where exhausted engineers watched blinking monitors in absolute silence. Astronauts described the growing awareness that space itself did not feel welcoming. Beyond Earth's atmosphere, familiar reality began falling away. There was only darkness, distance, and the moon waiting ahead. As missions advanced closer toward lunar orbit, unusual stories also began appearing around the edges of official history. Some early astronauts and military personnel reported strange lights moving unpredictably during test flights. Certain radar operators described unexplained objects, appearing briefly near mission trajectories before vanishing completely. There were occasional rumors of interrupted transmissions, missing recordings, or observations that never appeared in public reports afterward. Most of these accounts remain impossible to verify completely. Many may have ordinary explanations lost beneath decades of retelling and speculation. Yet what matters is not proof alone. It is the growing feeling that lunar exploration became increasingly secretive as humanity approached the moon itself. Something about the missions changed. Publicly, governments presented confidence and certainty. Cameras showed smiling astronauts waving beside rockets, while reporters celebrated scientific progress. But privately, many involved in the space program described overwhelming pressure and caution surrounding lunar operations. The moon was not treated casually. Every mission carried an atmosphere that felt closer to entering unknown territory than simply visiting another world. Perhaps that feeling was natural. Humanity had never stepped beyond Earth before. Fear would have been unavoidable. Yet the emotional tone surrounding the moon often felt heavier than fear alone. Ancient civilizations once imagined the moon as a gateway between worlds, a place connected to forces humanity barely understood. Now, modern astronauts prepared to descend toward its surface, carrying computers, cameras, and scientific instruments. But emotionally, the experience may not have been so different from the ancient myths. The moon remained silent, while humanity rushed toward it. Massive Saturn V rockets climbed slowly into darkness, carrying fragile human beings across nearly 240,000 miles of empty space toward a world no person had ever touched. Below them, Earth shrank into distance. Ahead of them waited endless grey landscapes untouched for billions of years. And perhaps that was the most unsettling part of all. The closer humanity came to the moon, the less it resembled a destination. It began feeling more like a threshold, a boundary separating the known world from something far older and more uncertain. By the time Apollo missions prepared for landing, astronauts were no longer approaching an object seen through telescopes alone. They were approaching a place surrounded by centuries of myth, unexplained anomalies, and growing secrecy. The world watched those missions, believing they represented victory, technology, and political achievement. But somewhere beneath that familiar story, another possibility quietly emerged. What if humanity was not simply racing toward the moon? What if it was racing toward answers nobody fully expected to find there? The moment humanity finally reached the moon is often remembered as a triumph. Flags planted into grey dust, astronauts speaking calmly through radios, while millions watched glowing television screens across Earth. History usually presents Apollo as the peak of human confidence. The instant civilization proved technology could overcome distance itself. But the emotional reality of those missions felt far stranger. As Apollo astronauts descended toward the lunar surface, something changed in the atmosphere surrounding the journey. The excitement remained, yet beneath it grew another feeling difficult to describe fully even now. Isolation became overwhelming. The moon did not resemble the vibrant worlds imagined in earlier science fiction stories. It appeared silent in a way that felt unnatural, almost oppressive. Endless grey terrain stretched beneath black skies, where no wind moved and no life existed. There was no sound except breathing, radio static, and the mechanical hum of survival equipment keeping human beings alive in a place never meant for them. Astronauts later struggled to explain what standing there actually felt like. Some described the experience as beautiful. Others spoke about a strange emotional distance, as though the moon existed outside normal reality. Time itself seemed altered there. Earth appeared small and fragile, suspended above the horizon, while the lunar landscape remained motionless beneath harsh sunlight and endless darkness. And surrounding all of it was silence. Not ordinary silence, but complete absence. No atmosphere carried vibration across the surface. No natural sounds interrupted the stillness. Every movement happened inside a vacuum older than human history itself. The moon felt less like a world and more like an abandoned place, waiting beyond the edge of familiarity. As the Apollo missions continued, rumors also began spreading outside official broadcasts. Stories emerged about missing transmissions, restricted recordings, and conversations the public supposedly never heard. Some claimed astronauts reported unusual lights moving near the horizon during lunar operations. Others spoke of unidentified objects observed briefly before disappearing beyond craters or shadows. There were theories suggesting portions of mission footage remained hidden from public archives. None of these stories have ever been confirmed completely. Yet, the uncertainty surrounding them became part of the mystery itself. Because secrecy has a way of transforming ordinary gaps in information into something larger. NASA operated under enormous political pressure during the Cold War, and many technical or military concerns naturally remained classified. But over time, the silence surrounding certain Apollo details began generating its own mythology. The more carefully information appeared controlled, the more people wondered what might have been omitted. And perhaps the strangest question emerged only after the missions ended. Humanity stopped going back. Official explanations focused on cost, shifting political priorities, and reduced public interest after the first successful landings. Those reasons are reasonable. Yet emotionally, the sudden ending still feels strange to many observers. During the 1960s, nations competed desperately to reach the moon first. Technology advanced with astonishing urgency. Entire governments treated lunar exploration as one of humanity's greatest priorities. Then, almost as quickly as it began, the momentum disappeared. Apollo 17 left the moon in 1972. Since then, no human being has returned. That detail lingers in the mind because it feels inconsistent with human behavior. Civilization crossed nearly 250,000 miles of empty space, stepped onto another world, and then chose not to continue exploring it directly for decades. The moon remained there, silent and untouched, while humanity turned its attention elsewhere. Some believe the answer is simple economics and politics. Others suspect something more unsettling happened psychologically during those missions. Not necessarily discovery in the dramatic sense imagined by conspiracy theories, but perhaps a growing awareness that the moon felt stranger, harsher, and more emotionally disturbing than anyone expected before arriving there. Even now, abandoned lunar equipment still rests exactly where astronauts left it. Flags stand motionless in eternal sunlight. Rover tracks remain pressed into dust that may not shift for millions of years. Tools, cameras, and landing modules sit frozen inside endless silence, while Earth watches from far away. The moon was never conquered. If anything, it feels as though humanity visited briefly, learned something difficult to explain, and quietly stepped back from the threshold once again. And hidden somewhere inside that silence remains the unsettling possibility that the moon still holds discoveries humanity never fully revealed to the world. For most of human history, the moon was imagined as a smooth and empty world, a silent sphere hanging above Earth with nothing hidden beneath its pale surface except rock and dust. Even after astronauts walked there, that image remained largely unchanged. The lunar surface appeared barren, lifeless, exposed endlessly beneath black skies. Yet over time, scientists began discovering something unexpected. The moon is far more complex underground than it appears from above. Beneath ancient craters and endless plains lie enormous structures formed billions of years ago during periods of violent volcanic activity. Massive lava tubes stretch beneath the lunar surface, like buried tunnels carved through stone by rivers of molten rock long since frozen into darkness. Some researchers believe these underground chambers are so large they could contain entire cities inside them. Unlike caves on Earth, shaped by water and erosion, these structures have remained untouched for unimaginable spans of time. No wind moves there. No rain falls. Nothing changes. The deeper scientists studied the moon using orbital scans and thermal imaging. The more signs of hidden complexity began emerging. Certain regions beneath the surface produce unusual heat signatures. Some crater floors appear to conceal vast hollow spaces below them. Radar mapping has revealed openings leading into caverns where sunlight may never have reached since the early formation of the solar system itself. The imagination naturally begins moving ahead of the evidence. What exists inside those buried chambers? Most scientists approach the question carefully and reasonably. They see geological formations, ancient volcanic systems, and potential shelter for future lunar missions. Yet, emotionally, the mystery feels larger than geology alone. These underground worlds have remained sealed in darkness, while human civilization rose and collapsed repeatedly on Earth. Entire eras of planetary history passed above them without disturbance. And unlike Earth, the Moon preserves the past almost perfectly. On Earth, oceans erase coastlines, wind destroys structures, forests swallow ruins, while tectonic movement reshapes continents over millions of years. Very little survives, unchanged across deep time. But the Moon is different. Footprints left by astronauts decades ago remain visible today because nothing there removes them. Ancient impact craters, billions of years old, still scar the surface exactly where they formed. The Moon remembers. That realization changes everything about how the audience sees it. The lunar surface stops feeling empty and begins feeling archival, almost like a vast storage place for forgotten time itself. If traces of ancient events once existed near Earth, the Moon may still preserve evidence long erased from our own planet. Perhaps that possibility explains why lunar mystery feels so powerful emotionally. The Moon does not simply orbit Earth, it watches Earth across ages. Every asteroid impact, every geological catastrophe, every rise of civilization beneath changing skies. And somewhere below the surface, hidden beneath miles of ancient rock and silent caverns, there may exist records humanity has not yet uncovered. Not necessarily artificial structures or dramatic discoveries imagined in science fiction, but perhaps evidence of processes, events, or histories far older than civilization itself. Still, speculation continues growing around those hidden depths. Some wonder whether underground lunar chambers could preserve traces of earlier exploration, ancient debris, or anomalies impossible to detect from orbit alone. Others believe the caverns may eventually reveal nothing except geology and silence. Yet even silence feels meaningful there, because the Moon preserves it so completely. The emotional weight of the mystery comes from possibility rather than certainty. Future explorers may one day descend into those untouched regions, carrying lights into darkness older than humanity itself. Their footsteps may become the first sounds ever heard inside chambers sealed since before complex life emerged on Earth. Walls untouched by sunlight for billions of years may suddenly reflect human movement for the first time. And somewhere within that image lives the reason the Moon continues haunting the imagination. Not because humanity already knows what waits beneath the surface, but because it does not. The Moon no longer feels like a dead object suspended above Earth. It feels unfinished, layered. Hidden beneath its familiar face may rest histories no civilization has fully uncovered yet. And as governments, private companies, and powerful institutions prepare quietly to return there once again, another question begins emerging from the darkness. What exactly are they hoping to find beneath the surface of the Moon now? There are certain ideas that immediately trigger resistance in the human mind, not because they are proven false, but because they feel too disruptive to consider comfortably. The possibility that the Moon may not be entirely natural is one of those ideas. For most people, the Moon belongs to the category of things accepted without question. It hangs above Earth every night with such consistency that its existence feels permanent, almost inevitable. Yet over time, a small number of researchers, scientists, writers, and independent thinkers began noticing something deeply unsettling hidden beneath that familiarity. The Moon does not merely appear unusual in isolated ways. It appears unusual repeatedly, across multiple layers of observation at once. Its size is statistically strange compared to Earth. Its orbit stabilizes the planet with remarkable precision. Its distance allows perfect eclipses impossible on most known worlds. Its seismic behavior during Apollo experiments produced reactions difficult to compare with Earth itself. And despite decades of research, scientists still debate details of its origin. Individually, these facts can be explained scientifically. Together, they create emotional discomfort powerful enough to inspire far more radical theories. Among them is the artificial moon hypothesis. The idea emerged gradually during the 20th century, not through mainstream astronomy, but through fringe speculation inspired by unresolved lunar anomalies. Certain researchers proposed a possibility both fascinating and disturbing. What if the moon was not formed entirely through natural processes? What if it had been altered, positioned, or even constructed intentionally in the distant past? The theory itself exists far outside accepted science. There is no direct evidence proving the moon was engineered by intelligent beings. Yet the emotional force of the idea does not come from proof alone. It comes from how strangely well certain details seem to fit together once the possibility enters the imagination. The moon suddenly stops feeling accidental. Ancient myths become more unsettling through this lens as well. Earlier civilizations described the moon as arriving after humanity already existed. Stories from Greece, Africa, and Mesoamerica spoke of altered skies, celestial wars, or divine beings connected to the moon's appearance. For centuries, these stories were dismissed as symbolic folklore. But when viewed beside modern lunar anomalies, they begin acquiring a different emotional weight. Not certainty, possibility. And possibility is often enough to transform the way people see reality forever. Some proponents of the artificial moon theory speculate that the object may function as an ancient observation platform or remnant of a forgotten civilization. Others imagine it as part of a vast cosmic engineering project designed to stabilize Earth and encourage life. More grounded interpretations avoid dramatic conclusions entirely, suggesting only that the moon may have experienced forms of modification humanity does not yet understand. What matters most is not whether the theory is correct. It is what happens psychologically once the question is asked. Because if the moon were even partially engineered, then human history would no longer exist inside a random universe alone. Civilization itself would suddenly appear connected to intelligence beyond Earth, perhaps older than humanity by unimaginable spans of time. Religion, science, history, and the meaning of isolation in the cosmos would shift instantly. The human mind instinctively resists that scale of implication. And yet the moon continues hanging above Earth, carrying the same unanswered anomalies it always has. Perhaps that is why the artificial moon hypothesis remains strangely compelling even among people who do not fully believe it. The theory transforms ordinary reality into something layered and uncertain. Every eclipse begins feeling intentional. Every ancient myth gains new emotional gravity. Every unexplained lunar detail starts resembling part of a pattern humanity cannot fully see yet. The moon no longer appears passive. It begins feeling present, watching silently across oceans, deserts, forests, and cities, while humanity slowly questions the object it accepted for thousands of years without truly understanding. The emotional tension no longer comes from fantasy alone. It comes from the possibility that certain questions feel disturbing precisely because they challenge assumptions so old they became invisible. And once the idea of an artificial moon enters the mind, another question emerges naturally from the darkness behind it. If something shaped, placed, or altered the moon long ago, then who or what possessed the ability to do it? Long before modern observatories tracked the moon with computers and satellites, ancient civilizations studied it with patience that now feels almost impossible to imagine. Night after night, generation after generation, people watched the sky carefully enough to notice subtle changes most modern eyes would never recognize. They measured shadows across stone temples, recorded lunar cycles with astonishing precision, and aligned massive monuments to movements occurring only once every many years. These were not casual observations. They were acts of devotion, calculation, and perhaps something deeper. Modern society often imagines ancient cultures as primitive compared to technological civilization, yet many of their astronomical achievements remain difficult to explain fully even today. Across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas, ancient structures appear aligned not only to the sun, but to rare lunar standstills and eclipses, requiring long-term observation across decades. Some megalithic sites seem designed specifically to track complex movements of the moon with remarkable accuracy. The question is not whether ancient people understood astronomy. Clearly, they did. The deeper mystery is why the moon mattered so much to them. Stone circles rose beneath cold skies, where priests and astronomers waited for precise lunar events hidden within enormous cycles of time. Temples faced exact points on the horizon, where the moon would appear only during rare celestial alignments. Entire calendars revolved around lunar movement, affecting rituals, agriculture, leadership, and sacred law itself. To ancient civilizations, the moon was never just scenery. It carried authority, and perhaps fear. Many myths describe celestial beings connected directly to the moon and stars above Earth. In Mesopotamia, divine rulers descended from heaven, bringing knowledge to humanity. In parts of Central America, stories spoke of luminous gods associated with cosmic cycles and destruction. Across multiple cultures, legends emerged describing sky beings who altered civilization itself after arriving from above. Most historians interpret these stories symbolically, and reasonably so. Ancient mythology often used celestial imagery to explain natural forces and spiritual ideas. Yet emotionally, another possibility lingers beneath the surface of those stories. What if fragments of inherited memory survived inside them? Not literal accounts exactly, but distorted reflections of experiences ancient humanity struggled to preserve across time. The atmosphere surrounding the moon begins changing once again. It no longer feels like an isolated object in the sky. It feels woven directly into the origins of civilization itself. Ancient cultures did not separate astronomy, religion, and history the way modern society does. To them, events in the heavens shaped reality on Earth completely. A changing moon could mean political collapse, divine warning, or cosmic transformation. And certain myths become especially unsettling when viewed through that perspective. Some traditions described periods of darkness before the current moon existed. Others associated the moon with catastrophe, floods, or shifts in the structure of the world itself. There are stories where celestial objects arrive after chaos in the heavens. Stories where gods bring order by changing the sky above humanity forever. No direct evidence confirms these myths as historical memory, but the repetition creates emotional tension difficult to dismiss entirely, especially when combined with the strange precision of ancient lunar observation itself. How did civilizations separated by oceans develop such deep fixation on tracking the moon across enormous spans of time? Why build massive stone monuments aligned to complex lunar cycles, unless those cycles carried extraordinary importance? And why do so many myths surrounding the moon contain undertones not of celebration alone, but caution? Perhaps ancient people understood something modern civilization forgot, or perhaps they feared something humanity no longer recognizes. The silence surrounding those questions feels especially powerful because the ancient world left no clear answers behind. Only ruins remain now. Broken temples beneath stars, weathered carvings facing horizons where the moon still rises exactly as it did thousands of years ago. The people who built those places are gone, but their attention toward the moon survives through stone itself. And maybe that is what feels most unsettling. The possibility that humanity's oldest civilizations were not asking primitive questions at all. They may have been attempting to preserve warnings, observations, or fragments of understanding for future generations, incapable of fully interpreting them anymore. If that possibility sounds extreme, modern institutions would naturally dismiss it immediately. Yet, somewhere quietly beneath official history, another question begins forming. Have governments, researchers, and intelligence agencies already investigated these ancient lunar mysteries far more seriously than the public realizes? Every mystery eventually attracts secrecy. The moment governments realized the moon represented more than scientific curiosity, lunar exploration became entangled with military strategy, intelligence operations, and controlled information. Publicly, the space race appeared driven by national pride and technological achievement. Behind closed doors, however, the moon carried another kind of value entirely. Whoever controlled access to space could potentially control communication, surveillance, navigation, and military advantage on a global scale. And so, as humanity approached the moon, silence began growing around certain parts of the story. During the Cold War, enormous amounts of information connected to space exploration were automatically classified. Some records vanished into military archives, others remained partially restricted for decades. Technical failures, unusual observations, interrupted transmissions, and disputed reports occasionally surfaced before disappearing again beneath official explanations and incomplete documentation. Most of this secrecy had ordinary reasons, at least officially. Yet secrecy itself changes the psychology of information. Whenever gaps appear in public understanding, the human mind instinctively begins filling them with possibilities. Missing recordings become suspicious. Restricted mission files become evidence of hidden truths. Silence starts generating mythology far more effectively than direct answers ever could. Over time, rumors surrounding lunar exploration expanded into an entire shadow history existing beneath the official one. There were claims of strange observations recorded during Apollo missions, but never discussed publicly afterward. Stories about missing telemetry tapes. Theories suggesting NASA edited or restricted certain photographs before releasing them. Accounts involving unexplained lights, unusual radar contacts, or objects observed briefly near lunar orbit. Most remain impossible to verify conclusively, yet none fully disappear either. And perhaps the most unsettling detail is how consistently unconventional questions about the moon were pushed toward the margins. Scientists, writers, and researchers who explored unusual lunar theories often found themselves dismissed quickly, regardless of the quality of their observations. That does not necessarily prove suppression. Extraordinary claims naturally require strong evidence. Yet, emotionally, the pattern creates discomfort because curiosity itself begins feeling dangerous whenever it challenges accepted reality too directly. The audience slowly begins realizing something important. The issue is no longer whether every conspiracy theory surrounding the moon is true. Clearly, many are exaggerated. The deeper issue is why the moon continues generating secrecy, avoidance, and emotional tension at all. Even now, decades after Apollo, powerful nations remain intensely interested in returning there. Plans for permanent lunar bases continue expanding. Governments and private corporations discuss mining operations involving rare resources buried beneath the surface. Military analysts openly examine the strategic importance of controlling lunar infrastructure in the future. The moon is no longer treated as symbolic alone. It is treated as valuable. Exceptionally valuable. And hidden beneath those practical ambitions is another unsettling possibility. Perhaps institutions understand something about the moon's long-term importance that the public does not fully recognize yet. Not necessarily alien structures or dramatic revelations, but perhaps knowledge connected to survival, technology, or hidden scientific potential, capable of reshaping civilization itself. The atmosphere surrounding the moon becomes increasingly paranoid once viewed through this lens. Ancient civilizations preserved myths about celestial powers and changing skies. Modern governments preserve classified files, strategic programs, and carefully managed narratives. Different eras, different methods, yet both suggest humanity treats the moon with unusual seriousness, almost caution. The emotional shift happening inside the documentary becomes impossible to ignore now. Earlier sections explored the moon as mystery. Then came anomaly, mythology, and speculation. But here, the tension changes form entirely. The audience is no longer asking whether the moon is strange. They are asking how much humanity may already know about it privately. And perhaps more importantly, how much remains deliberately unspoken. Because once secrecy enters the story, every unanswered question acquires a different emotional weight. Every missing recording feels symbolic. Every restricted archive feels suggestive. Every sudden shift in policy surrounding lunar exploration begins appearing connected to something larger hidden beneath the surface. The moon no longer feels distant. It feels monitored, watched over carefully by institutions that understand its importance far more deeply than ordinary people ever realized. And if humanity's relationship with the moon already contains hidden layers of secrecy, then perhaps the mystery extends beyond Earth itself. Because the next question waiting in the darkness is even larger than governments, classified documents, or ancient civilizations. What if the moon connects humanity to something far older than human history altogether? For thousands of years, humanity looked upward, believing the moon was simply watching silently over Earth. Ancient people saw it as a guide, a god, a warning, or a symbol of eternity, but almost never asked a darker question hiding beneath all those interpretations. What if something on the moon was watching back? The idea sounds unsettling precisely because the moon feels so familiar. Human beings are not naturally disturbed by distant galaxies or invisible black holes in the same way. Those belong to unreachable parts of the universe. The moon is different. It exists close enough to dominate the night sky, close enough to shape tides and eclipses, close enough to feel emotionally connected to human life itself. And perhaps that closeness is what makes certain mysteries surrounding it feel so deeply uncomfortable. Across centuries, astronomers repeatedly recorded strange observations on the lunar surface. brief flashes of light appearing inside dark craters, sudden glowing patches visible for only moments before vanishing, temporary color changes moving across regions where nothing should move at all. These events became known as transient lunar phenomena, and even today many remain unexplained completely. Most scientists believe ordinary explanations exist. Gas releases beneath the surface, meteorite impacts, electrostatic effects, or unusual lighting conditions may account for many sightings. Yet the reports continued, appearing generation after generation, often described by experienced observers who spent entire lifetimes studying the moon carefully. The mystery survives because certainty never fully arrived. Some accounts describe lights moving along crater walls. Others mention brief geometric patterns or unexplained shadows shifting across the surface. None provide undeniable proof of anything extraordinary. Still, the psychological effect remains powerful because the moon itself already occupies such a strange place inside the human imagination. Silence changes meaning once possibility enters it. The storytelling surrounding the moon gradually becomes less scientific and more atmospheric here. Human beings standing beneath ancient skies begin feeling small again. A lone observer watches the moon from a mountaintop thousands of years ago, wondering whether celestial beings exist beyond Earth. Centuries later, another observer studies the same object through a telescope and reports a brief flash of light no one can fully explain. Different eras, different technology. Yet, the same emotional tension survives. The feeling that the moon may contain presence. Ancient cultures often spoke of watchers in the sky, beings connected to stars, heavens, or luminous objects moving above humanity. Most historians interpret these stories symbolically, and likely many are. But emotionally, those myths become more unsettling once combined with modern speculation about observation from beyond Earth. Because from a purely strategic perspective, the moon occupies an extraordinary position. It circles Earth continuously, while remaining close enough for detailed observation of the planet below. Any advanced intelligence seeking to monitor Earth across long spans of time could hardly choose a better location. The moon provides stable orbit, predictable movement, and permanent visibility over human civilization itself. Science fiction explored this idea endlessly throughout the 20th century. Conspiracy theories expanded it further. Philosophers examined the psychological implications behind it. Yet the reason the concept survives is not because evidence confirms it directly. It survives because emotionally, it feels strangely plausible once enough unanswered questions gather around the moon itself. The audience slowly realizes something important. The fear does not come from hostile aliens or dramatic invasions. It comes from the possibility of quiet observation. The idea that humanity may have spent its entire history beneath a silent presence, never fully noticed because it appeared too ordinary to question deeply enough. The moon changes emotionally once viewed through that lens. It no longer feels like scenery decorating the night sky. It begins feeling aware. Ancient fears about celestial watchers merge subtly with modern uncertainty surrounding unexplained lunar phenomena. The psychological distance between mythology and cosmic speculation starts collapsing. And somewhere inside that collapse, another unsettling possibility emerges. Perhaps humanity has already encountered fragments of evidence suggesting intelligence beyond Earth without fully recognizing what it was seeing at the time. Because if the moon truly functions as a silent observer, then the next question becomes impossible to avoid. Has humanity already received signs that something else exists out there, watching from the darkness beyond Earth? The deeper humanity moved into space, the stranger certain moments became. Not dramatic invasions or undeniable revelations, but fragments. Brief anomalies buried inside radio transmissions, photographs, and memories difficult to explain clearly afterward. During the height of the space age, the moon transformed into more than a scientific destination. It became a screen onto which humanity projected fear, wonder, and suspicion all at once. And somewhere inside that atmosphere, stories began accumulating quietly. Astronauts occasionally reported seeing unusual lights during missions. Some described objects moving in ways that seemed difficult to identify immediately through windows facing empty space. Certain lunar photographs appeared to contain strange shadows or geometric forms that later fueled decades of speculation. Most experts dismiss these claims as misunderstandings caused by lighting conditions, lens distortion, or the psychological stress of space travel itself. Yet uncertainty changes everything emotionally. A single missing frame from mission footage suddenly feels important once the audience believes something may have been hidden. Distorted radio signals become mysterious. Contradictory witness statements gain symbolic weight far beyond their original context. The moon exists so deeply inside the human imagination that even ordinary anomalies begin expanding into mythology once certainty disappears. And during the Cold War, certainty disappeared often. Public fascination with lunar mystery exploded during the 1960s and 1970s because technology, secrecy, and imagination collided at exactly the same moment. Science fiction films portrayed hidden civilizations beneath the moon's surface, while governments conducted classified space operations behind closed doors. Television broadcasts carried astronauts into space for the first time, while rumors spread through newspapers, radio shows, and whispered conversations about things the public supposedly was not being told. The line separating fact from speculation became increasingly difficult to see clearly. One photograph might contain nothing more than unusual contrast and shadow. Another might show light reflecting strangely from lunar dust. But emotionally, people no longer viewed those images neutrally. They searched them for evidence. Every crater looked capable of hiding something unknown. Every transmission interruption felt loaded with possibility. And perhaps that reaction reveals something profound about human psychology itself. The moon became symbolic of a threshold where certainty begins dissolving. It represented the edge of the known world at the exact moment humanity first possessed the technology to cross into it physically. The emotional pressure created by that transition was enormous. For the first time in history, human beings were no longer imagining what existed beyond Earth. They were confronting it directly. And somewhere beneath all the speculation lies another unsettling thought. Perhaps humanity fears discovering intelligence beyond Earth more than it fears being alone. Loneliness is painful, but understandable. Observation is different. The idea that another intelligence may exist silently beyond humanity's awareness forces civilization to reconsider its place in existence completely. The moon intensifies that fear, because it feels close enough to matter personally. If unexplained signals or anomalies emerged from distant galaxies, they would still feel abstract to most people. The moon hangs above every city, ocean, and battlefield on Earth. It watches human civilization continuously. That closeness transforms possibility into emotional tension. Stories about strange lunar encounters survive not because they are fully proven, but because they exist inside uncertainty permanently. No definitive answer ever arrives. Instead, fragments remain scattered across decades of recordings, photographs, interviews, and speculation. Some accounts are almost certainly misunderstandings. Others remain unresolved simply because information is incomplete. Yet together, they create an atmosphere impossible to ignore completely. Silence becomes part of the mystery. The moon appears motionless above Earth, while humanity projects questions onto its surface generation after generation. Ancient people imagined gods and celestial watchers there. Modern civilization imagines hidden signals, unexplained phenomena, and silent observation from beyond Earth. Different language, different technology. Yet emotionally, the same fear survives beneath both interpretations. The fear that humanity may not fully understand what it has been looking at all along. And perhaps that explains why the moon continues holding such extraordinary psychological power over the human imagination. Not because it confirms the existence of intelligence beyond Earth, but because it forces humanity to confront how little certainty truly exists once familiar reality begins unraveling. The deeper the mystery grows, the less the moon feels like an object. It begins feeling like a mirror, reflecting humanity's oldest questions back toward itself. The deeper the moon's mysteries become, the more another question begins quietly emerging beneath them all. Why does humanity need them so badly? Not simply curiosity about science or space, but something more emotional and difficult to explain. Across thousands of years, people have continuously imagined hidden truths beneath the moon's surface. Ancient civilizations filled the night sky with gods and celestial warnings. Modern culture fills it with conspiracies, secret bases, forgotten civilizations, and silent observers. Different eras tell different stories, yet the emotional pattern remains strangely consistent. The moon seems to awaken something inside the human mind itself. Perhaps that is because it exists in a perfect psychological position. It is close enough to feel familiar, yet distant enough to remain unreachable emotionally. Humanity can study it, land on it, and map its surface in extraordinary detail. But the moon still resists intimacy. It hangs above Earth every night, untouched by ordinary human life, silent, cold, watching from a distance that feels both small and infinite at the same time. That contradiction gives the moon enormous emotional power. People often believe mystery survives because knowledge is incomplete. But sometimes mystery survives because certainty itself feels emotionally unsatisfying. Human beings rarely stop searching simply because answers appear. Instead, new questions emerge beneath old ones continuously. Science explains the mechanics of eclipses, gravity, and lunar formation. Yet millions of people still feel something ancient while staring at the moon alone at night. The feeling does not disappear with explanation. If anything, explanation sometimes deepens it. Ancient myths, scientific exploration, spiritual symbolism, and modern conspiracies may appear unrelated on the surface, but emotionally they are connected through one continuous human instinct: the desire to find meaning hidden beneath visible reality. Humanity searches oceans, ruins, stars, and ancient texts for signs that existence contains layers not immediately obvious to the eye. The moon becomes the perfect symbol for that search. It reflects fear and longing at the same time, loneliness and connection, rational thought and imagination. To some people, the moon represents isolation in a vast universe. To others, it represents the possibility that humanity is not alone at all. Even its silence feels emotionally flexible, capable of carrying whatever hope or anxiety the observer brings to it. And perhaps that is why lunar mystery remains so powerful across generations. The moon acts almost like a mirror. Ancient civilizations projected divine meaning onto it. Modern civilization projects hidden technology, extraterrestrial possibility, and suppressed truth. Yet beneath all these interpretations lies the same emotional tension. Humanity wants the universe to feel meaningful. Randomness alone often feels too empty to satisfy the human spirit completely. That realization changes the atmosphere of the documentary once again. The question is no longer whether the moon truly contains hidden civilizations, artificial structures, or unknown intelligence. Those possibilities remain uncertain. The deeper question becomes, why human beings repeatedly imagine such things in the first place? What emotional need do these mysteries fulfill? Perhaps the answer is connected to consciousness itself. Human beings are aware enough to recognize their own fragility, yet curious enough to keep searching beyond it endlessly. The moon occupies a unique place within that search, because it exists directly between the ordinary and the cosmic. It is part of daily life, and part of the unknown simultaneously. The emotional tone softens here, becoming quieter and more reflective. The audience is no longer pushed toward dramatic revelation. Instead, they are invited to sit beside uncertainty peacefully. The moon remains suspended above Earth exactly as it always has, unchanged by mythology, science, or speculation. Humanity changes beneath it. Civilizations rise, collapse, and reinterpret its meaning again and again. And perhaps mystery itself is not a problem waiting to be solved. Perhaps it is something necessary, a reminder that reality may always contain hidden layers beyond complete understanding. The moon survives inside the human imagination because it represents the boundary where knowledge ends and wonder begins. Even now, after centuries of observation and exploration, people still look upward, feeling there is something unfinished about it, not because the moon necessarily hides answers, but because it awakens questions humanity cannot stop asking. And as the modern world prepares to return there once again with renewed urgency, those questions may soon become more important than ever before. For nearly half a century after the Apollo missions ended, the moon seemed to drift quietly into the background of human ambition. Governments lost urgency, public fascination faded. Space agencies spoke more often about satellites, Mars, and orbital research than lunar return missions. The footprints left in the dust during the 1970s remained untouched while humanity focused its attention elsewhere. And then, slowly at first, something changed. Nations began announcing new lunar programs almost simultaneously. Private corporations invested enormous resources into moon-related technology. Military analysts started discussing lunar strategy openly. Plans for permanent bases, underground habitats, mining operations, and long-term settlement appeared with growing frequency across multiple countries at once. The silence surrounding the moon ended. Officially, the reasons seem practical enough. The moon contains resources valuable for future space exploration, including rare minerals and deposits of helium. 3. A material some scientists believe could become important for advanced energy systems someday. Its low gravity makes it an ideal launch point for deeper missions into the solar system. Lunar bases could serve as stepping stones toward Mars and beyond. Yet emotionally, those explanations feel incomplete. Because humanity is not behaving cautiously or experimentally anymore, it is behaving urgently. That emotional shift becomes impossible to ignore once the timeline is examined carefully. After decades of relative inactivity, major powers suddenly accelerated lunar ambitions within a remarkably short period. The United States announced plans to return astronauts to the moon. China expanded lunar exploration aggressively. Russia, India, Japan, and private aerospace companies all intensified long-term lunar development strategies almost simultaneously. The pattern feels coordinated even if it is not. And beneath the official language of science and exploration, another atmosphere quietly emerges. Competition, strategic positioning, preparation. The moon is no longer discussed merely as a place to visit. It is discussed as territory. Military organizations openly examine the importance of lunar infrastructure and orbital dominance. Governments discuss protecting future lunar assets long before those assets fully exist. Private corporations compete for mining rights involving resources buried beneath the surface. Entire economic models are being imagined around permanent human activity on the moon. The audience begins sensing that something larger may be unfolding beneath public conversation. Not necessarily conspiracy in the dramatic sense, but perhaps realization, a growing awareness among powerful institutions that the moon represents far more than symbolic exploration. It may hold technological, economic, or strategic value capable of reshaping civilization itself over the coming century. Still, another possibility lingers quietly beneath even those explanations. What if humanity's renewed urgency is not driven only by opportunity? What if it is driven partly by discovery? The documentary never claims governments found hidden structures or undeniable evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. There is no confirmed proof of that. Yet the emotional tension comes from timing. Why did multiple world powers suddenly decide the moon mattered again after appearing indifferent for decades? Why now? Perhaps new data changed long-term priorities. Perhaps advancing technology finally made lunar development economically realistic. Or perhaps certain discoveries about subsurface resources, hidden geological structures, or strategic potential altered how governments view the moon entirely. The uncertainty itself becomes psychologically powerful. Because once suspicion enters the story, ordinary events begin feeling charged with hidden meaning. Every rocket launch carries emotional weight. Every lunar mission announcement feels connected to something unfolding quietly behind public understanding. The moon no longer appears abandoned. It appears claimed. And unlike the Apollo era, modern lunar plans are not temporary. Humanity speaks openly now about staying. Permanent bases, underground habitats, industrial operations beneath lunar soil. Entire generations of engineers and scientists are designing systems meant to transform the moon from a destination into infrastructure. The scale of ambition feels enormous compared to the sudden abandonment that followed Apollo decades earlier. That contrast creates one of the documentary's most unsettling emotional shifts. Humanity once reached the moon briefly and walked away. Now it seems determined to return permanently. And somewhere beneath the surface of those ambitions lives another possibility too compelling to ignore completely. Perhaps the greatest discoveries waiting on the moon have not been found yet. Perhaps that is why the world suddenly appears so desperate to go back. Because beneath the dust, inside ancient craters and buried caverns untouched for billions of years, something may still be waiting in the darkness for humanity to uncover. From Earth, the moon appears exposed. A silent sphere covered in endless dust and ancient scars beneath open black skies. Nothing about it seems hidden at first glance. Yet beneath that familiar surface may exist an entire underground world untouched for billions of years. The deeper scientists studied the moon, the more evidence emerged, suggesting vast networks of subterranean structures stretching beneath ancient plains and crater fields. During periods of violent volcanic activity, Early in lunar history, rivers of molten rock carved enormous tunnels beneath the surface before cooling into solid stone. These lava tubes are unlike anything found naturally on Earth. Some may be large enough to contain entire cities. Orbital imaging and radar scans have revealed openings leading into dark shafts descending below the lunar crust. Certain collapsed regions appear connected to immense hollow chambers extending far beyond visible entrances. In some places, temperatures deep underground remain far more stable than the hostile surface environment above. For modern scientists, these discoveries represent practical opportunity. Underground lunar habitats could shield future astronauts from radiation, extreme temperatures, and micrometeorite impacts. But emotionally, the discoveries feel much larger than engineering alone. The moon begins transforming from a dead landscape into something layered and concealed, a buried archive waiting quietly beneath dust untouched since before human existence itself. The imagination naturally drifts into darkness beneath the surface, where no wind has ever blown and no sunlight has reached for unimaginable spans of time. Silence becomes almost physical there. Unlike Earth, the moon preserves history with extraordinary precision. On Earth, water, weather, and geological movement erase the past constantly. Entire civilizations vanish beneath forests and oceans over thousands of years. But the moon remains almost frozen in time. Footprints survive. Impact craters remain unchanged across billions of years. Nothing disturbs the surface unless something collides with it directly. And below the surface, preservation may become even more complete. The documentary slowly invites the audience deeper underground. Vast caverns stretch beneath lunar plains like hidden cathedrals carved into stone by forces older than life on Earth. Some chambers may have remained sealed since the earliest days of the solar system. Others could contain geological records, revealing ancient cosmic events humanity has never fully reconstructed. The atmosphere grows increasingly hypnotic and unsettling. Because once the possibility of hidden worlds beneath the moon enters the imagination, every unanswered question gains new emotional gravity. What exists inside those untouched spaces? Geological silence alone? Preserved evidence of forgotten cosmic impacts? Or something humanity has not yet considered seriously enough? The documentary never claims hidden civilizations exist beneath the moon. There is no verified proof of artificial structures waiting underground. Yet the emotional tension emerges from possibility rather than certainty. The moon's underground landscape feels almost designed to provoke speculation, because it combines scientific realism with psychological mystery so perfectly. A tunnel descending into darkness immediately becomes symbolic. A sealed chamber untouched for billions of years feels like a locked memory. And perhaps that is why lunar exploration increasingly focuses below the surface itself. Future missions are no longer interested only in walking across dust beneath open skies. Scientists and engineers want to descend, to map underground regions, to build habitats inside them, to uncover what remains hidden beneath ancient rock. The moon slowly stops feeling empty. It begins feeling preserved, like something waiting patiently beneath layers of silence, while human civilization slowly advances toward it once again. Future explorers may one day carry lights into caverns no living thing has entered before. Their footsteps may echo through tunnels formed before Earth possessed oceans. Every movement inside those spaces will feel suspended between scientific discovery and existential confrontation. Because deep underground, beneath billions of years of untouched stone, humanity may finally encounter something more unsettling than alien life or ancient structures. The realization of how much history can disappear while silence survives. And as the possibility of hidden worlds beneath the moon expands, another question emerges naturally from the darkness waiting below. What happens if future explorers uncover evidence capable of changing human history forever? At the center of every great mystery lies a deeper fear, rarely spoken aloud. Not fear that nothing will be discovered, but fear that something will. The moon has always carried that tension quietly beneath its surface. Every unanswered anomaly, every hidden cavern, every ancient myth and classified file ultimately points toward one possibility powerful enough to transform human civilization completely. What if the moon contains evidence that humanity misunderstood its own story from the beginning? The documentary slows here, becoming quieter and more reflective. There is no dramatic revelation waiting suddenly in the darkness. No single answer capable of explaining every mystery perfectly. Instead, the audience is invited to imagine possibility itself unfolding gradually through discovery. Perhaps future explorers uncover ancient artifacts buried beneath layers of lunar stone. Not elaborate cities or impossible machines, but something undeniable, a structure that should not exist naturally. A material carrying signs of intentional design, a record preserved inside untouched caverns, older than human civilization itself. Or perhaps the discovery is even more unsettling. Evidence that intelligent life existed somewhere near Earth long before recorded history began. Traces of forgotten technological activity preserved on the Moon because the Moon never forgets. While Earth erased its own past through oceans, weather, and geological change, the lunar surface remained frozen in silence, preserving fragments of history impossible to recover anywhere else. The emotional power of such a discovery would reach far beyond science. Religion would change. Philosophy would change. Human identity itself would shift almost instantly. For centuries, civilization has operated beneath certain assumptions about its origins and place within the universe. Even people who question official history usually still believe humanity stands fundamentally alone within its own story. But undeniable evidence connected to the Moon could fracture that certainty completely. And the documentary asks another uncomfortable question. Would humanity even be psychologically prepared for the truth? Scientific revolutions throughout history repeatedly triggered resistance before acceptance. People resisted the idea that Earth orbited the Sunday. They resisted evolution, deep geological time, and the vast scale of the cosmos itself. Human civilization prefers stable narratives because stability creates emotional security. A discovery tied to the Moon could destabilize multiple systems of understanding simultaneously. Governments might fear panic. Religious institutions might fear collapse of authority. Scientific communities might struggle against implications too disruptive to integrate easily. The audience begins sensing how fragile modern certainty actually is beneath the surface. Most people move through daily life, assuming reality is largely understood. Yet history repeatedly demonstrates how quickly entire worldviews can change once new evidence appears. The Moon becomes symbolic of that threshold once again. Not simply a place holding secrets, but a place capable of forcing humanity to confront itself differently. The greatest discoveries rarely begin with confidence. They begin with someone questioning what previously felt untouchable. And perhaps that is why lunar mystery remains so emotionally powerful. Because deep down, humanity suspects the universe may still contain truths large enough to reshape civilization overnight. The atmosphere becomes almost dreamlike now. Future astronauts descend into ancient lunar caverns, carrying lights through darkness untouched for billions of years. Their movements echo softly against stone walls older than Earth's oldest surviving structures. Dust drifts through silent, airless chambers, while shadows stretch endlessly beyond the reach of human vision. Then something appears. Not clearly enough for certainty, just enough to change everything. The documentary does not reveal what waits there, because uncertainty itself carries more emotional weight than direct answers ever could. The audience is left suspended inside possibility, imagining what humanity might become after confronting evidence that its history extends deeper and farther than anyone believed before. The Moon no longer feels distant from revelation. It feels close, waiting silently above Earth, while civilization moves toward it once again with growing urgency, technology, and expectation. And somewhere beneath the surface, beneath ancient stone untouched by sunlight across unimaginable spans of time, there may still exist memories humanity has not uncovered yet. The final image lingers quietly. Astronauts standing motionless inside a vast lunar cavern, while their lights illuminate something hidden in darkness for ages beyond comprehension. And then the question arrives softly from the silence itself. What if the Moon remembers something humanity forgot? The deeper humanity searches for answers about the Moon, the more another unsettling possibility begins emerging much closer to home. What if Earth itself has forgotten parts of its own history? Modern civilization often imagines history as a straight line, beginning with primitive survival and slowly progressing toward advanced technology and scientific understanding. Yet scattered across the planet are signs suggesting the story may not be so simple. Ancient ruins stand in places where civilizations should not have possessed the knowledge to build them so precisely. Entire coastlines lie submerged beneath oceans. Massive stone structures survive from periods historians still struggle to reconstruct fully. And between known chapters of human history, strange gaps remain. The documentary turns away from the moon briefly and looks back at Earth itself. Aerial views reveal collapsed cities swallowed by jungle, eroded monuments buried beneath sand, and ancient settlements hidden under layers of sediment. The emotional atmosphere changes immediately. Humanity no longer appears permanent or secure. Civilization begins feeling fragile, temporary. Again and again throughout history, people built societies near rivers, fertile plains, and coastlines. These regions allowed agriculture, trade, and expansion to flourish. Yet they are also the exact places most vulnerable to catastrophic flooding, rising seas, and environmental collapse. If advanced societies existed thousands of years earlier than accepted history suggests, many traces of them may now rest beneath water or deep geological layers impossible to uncover easily. The Earth carries scars everywhere. Massive impact craters remain visible across continents. Geological evidence points towards sudden climate shifts, capable of transforming entire ecosystems within surprisingly short periods of time. Species vanished abruptly, temperatures changed violently, oceans rose and coastlines disappeared beneath water. Some catastrophes unfolded slowly across centuries, others may have arrived almost without warning. And perhaps most unsettling of all, ancient myths seem to remember them. Flood stories appear across civilizations, separated by enormous distances and no known contact with one another. Cultures from Mesopotamia, India, Mesoamerica, and countless other regions preserved memories of great destruction, rising waters, darkness in the sky, or collapsing worlds. Historians usually interpret these stories symbolically or as localized disasters expanded through oral tradition. Yet certain theories suggest something larger may have happened. One of the most controversial involves the Younger Dryas period, a sudden climatic event occurring roughly 12,000 years ago. Some researchers believe Earth may have experienced catastrophic environmental disruption triggered by impacts, atmospheric changes, or massive flooding events. The theory remains debated heavily, but its emotional implications are extraordinary. Because if sudden catastrophe interrupted human development during that era, then civilization itself may be far older than currently accepted. Entire societies could have disappeared beneath oceans and ice, long before recorded history officially begins. Knowledge may have fragmented into myth and legend, carried by survivors struggling to preserve memory across generations. The audience slowly begins feeling the scale of that possibility emotionally. Humanity may not stand at the beginning of civilization. It may stand after multiple forgotten beginnings. Ancient monuments become more unsettling through this perspective. Strange alignments with stars and lunar cycles no longer feel merely symbolic. They begin resembling attempts to preserve knowledge through catastrophe itself. Massive stone structures survive because stone survives when paper, language, and cities disappear. The emotional tone becomes quieter and more reflective now. Earth no longer feels stable beneath human civilization. Oceans cover histories nobody remembers. Forests hide ruins older than written language. Deserts bury traces of forgotten worlds beneath endless sand, while modern society moves across the surface, unaware of how much may already be lost. And hanging above all of it remains the moon. Silent, watching, preserving. Because unlike Earth, the moon does not erase its past so easily. The planet below changes constantly through weather, oceans, earthquakes, and time itself. But the moon remains almost frozen in comparison, holding scars and structures unchanged across unimaginable ages. If catastrophic events reshaped human history repeatedly, then perhaps the moon remembers them more clearly than Earth ever could. And somewhere across its ancient surface may still exist evidence of forgotten eras humanity has not yet recovered from the silence. Earth forgets. That may be one of the most important truths hidden beneath human history. Oceans swallow coastlines. Earthquakes reshape continents. Ice advances and retreats across entire regions, while forests consume abandoned cities beneath layers of soil and roots. Time moves constantly across the planet, erasing details faster than civilizations can preserve them. But the moon is different. The moon remembers. As the documentary returns once again to the cratered surface, hanging above Earth, the emotional atmosphere changes completely. The moon no longer appears empty or lifeless. It begins feeling archival. almost like a vast storage place preserving records of events. Earth itself can no longer recall clearly. Every crater visible on the lunar surface represents an impact frozen in time. Some are small and recent. Others formed billions of years ago, when the young solar system experienced periods of violent bombardment unlike anything modern humanity has witnessed. On Earth, traces of many ancient impacts disappeared long ago beneath oceans, tectonic movement, and erosion. Yet the Moon still carries those scars openly across its surface, because nothing there erases them. The audience slowly realizes something unsettling. The Moon may preserve evidence of Earth's hidden past better than Earth itself. Ancient collisions that reshaped planetary history almost certainly struck both worlds together. Massive debris fields crossed the inner solar system repeatedly during periods of chaos and destruction. The Moon absorbed countless impacts that otherwise might have struck Earth directly. In that sense, the Moon may have functioned both as shield and witness throughout Earth's violent evolution. The silence surrounding those ancient scars becomes emotionally overwhelming. Each crater suddenly resembles a memory, a frozen moment from periods of catastrophe. No human civilization survived to describe. Entire chapters of planetary history remain visible above Earth every night, while humanity rarely considers what those scars truly represent. The storytelling becomes slower and more reflective here. The camera drifts across endless grey plains and shattered impact basins stretching beyond the horizon. Nothing moves there, no weather softens the landscape. Billions of years remain exposed directly beneath cold sunlight and endless darkness. And somewhere among those ancient layers may exist records humanity has not even begun searching for properly yet. Scientists already study lunar geology as a way to understand early solar system history. But the documentary introduces another possibility, far more unsettling emotionally. What if future lunar archaeology reveals evidence not only of cosmic impacts, but of forgotten technological activity from unknown periods of history? The idea remains speculative, but deeply powerful. If Earth experienced catastrophic resets, capable of erasing civilizations almost completely, then traces of earlier human or pre-human activity might survive more clearly on the Moon than anywhere on Earth itself. A small structure, artificial material, or preserved anomaly could theoretically remain untouched for millions of years beneath lunar dust, while Earth erased every equivalent trace long ago. The Moon suddenly stops feeling passive. It begins feeling ancient, like a relic surviving from eras too distant for modern civilization to imagine comfortably. Humanity becomes small against that scale of time. Entire species appeared and vanished, while the Moon continued circling Earth unchanged, recording impacts, catastrophes, and cosmic violence across its silent surface. The emotional weight comes not from certainty, but from perspective. Modern civilization often behaves as though history began recently, because written records extend back only a few thousand years clearly. Yet the Moon carries evidence from spans of time so vast they almost dissolve ordinary human understanding entirely. Looking at it becomes strangely humbling once the audience realizes how temporary civilization may actually be. And somewhere beneath all those ancient scars lies another disturbing possibility. If Earth's past contains erased chapters, then perhaps civilization itself has risen and fallen more than once already. Perhaps humanity's story is not linear at all, but cyclical. Catastrophe, followed by rebuilding. Memory, followed by forgetting. Knowledge rising briefly before disappearing again beneath oceans, dust, and time. The Moon remains above it all, watching silently, preserving what Earth cannot. And as future missions prepare to investigate the lunar surface more deeply than ever before, another question begins emerging slowly from the darkness between craters and ancient ruins of time itself. Could human civilization already be trapped inside a repeating cycle it does not even recognize anymore? Human beings are taught to see history as progress. The story usually begins with primitive survival, then slowly rises through agriculture, cities, science, industry, and modern technology. Civilization appears to move forward continuously, each generation building upon the last. Yet beneath that comforting narrative lies another possibility far older and far more unsettling. What if history does not move in a straight line at all? What if civilization rises, collapses, forgets, and begins again in cycles humanity barely remembers? Ancient traditions across the world preserved stories describing previous worlds destroyed before the current one emerged. Some spoke of floods, swallowing entire civilizations beneath rising seas. Others described fire falling from the heavens, darkness covering Earth, or celestial events that shattered human society completely. In Hindu cosmology, entire ages of humanity rise and collapse endlessly through repeating cosmic cycles. Greek traditions spoke of successive ages ending in destruction and decline. Similar patterns appear again and again across cultures separated by oceans and centuries. Modern civilization often treats these stories symbolically. Yet emotionally, they begin feeling different once geological evidence of sudden catastrophe enters the picture. Ancient myths no longer sound like simple fantasy alone. They resemble fragmented memory carried through oral tradition after events too traumatic or enormous to preserve accurately. And perhaps that is why the stories survived. The documentary becomes increasingly philosophical now. The audience is invited to imagine humanity not as a permanent force advancing steadily toward the future, but as something fragile moving through recurring periods of collapse and rebirth. Entire civilizations may have vanished before recorded history began, leaving behind only scattered ruins, distorted myths, and unconscious fears preserved across generations. The emotional tension intensifies when the narration turns toward the modern world itself. Because for all its technological sophistication, modern civilization remains astonishingly vulnerable. Global supply systems stretch across oceans. Electricity powers nearly every aspect of daily life. Satellites orbit silently above Earth, controlling communication, navigation, and infrastructure. Humanity appears powerful until one begins imagining how quickly interconnected systems could fail beneath environmental catastrophe, cosmic impact, or sudden climate instability. The illusion of permanence weakens immediately. Ancient civilizations likely believed themselves stable too. Perhaps every civilization does. The moon enters the story once again here, not as distant scenery, but as a possible participant in these forgotten cycles. Scientists already know the moon influences Earth profoundly through tides, axial stability, and long-term planetary balance. Yet some researchers and theorists speculate there may be additional lunar effects humanity still does not fully understand. Ancient impacts involving the moon and Earth-shaped planetary history directly. Gravitational changes may have influenced climate over immense spans of time. Celestial bombardments, preserved across the lunar surface, hint at eras of cosmic violence, capable of transforming Earth repeatedly. And somewhere inside those possibilities emerges another disturbing thought. What if the moon itself has always been connected to humanity's cycles of collapse? Not necessarily through intention or artificial control, but through hidden cosmic relationships modern science still only partially understands. Ancient cultures often linked the moon with catastrophe, transformation, and cyclical destruction. Perhaps those myths survived because the moon genuinely played a role in shaping Earth's recurring instability across deep time. The storytelling becomes almost hypnotic now. The audience drifts through repeating images across history. Civilizations rise beside rivers beneath moonlit skies. Towers and temples reach upward toward the heavens. Then suddenly, darkness, floods, fire, silence. Centuries pass. New civilizations emerge from ruins, without fully understanding what came before them. Again and again. The emotional effect is profound because it transforms humanity from master of history into participant within something vastly older and larger. Modern civilization stops feeling final. It begins feeling temporary, suspended inside patterns repeating across spans of time far beyond ordinary memory. And perhaps the most unsettling realization is not that collapse happened before. It is that humanity may never have escaped the cycle at all. The moon remains above Earth through every phase of it, silent during catastrophe, silent during rebuilding, silent while civilizations rise, believing themselves permanent before disappearing once again into myth and forgotten history. And as the chapter closes, one final question lingers quietly inside the darkness. What if history is not progressing toward the future, but repeating the past? For most of history, humanity looked at the moon as something distant and unreachable. Ancient civilizations filled it with gods, omens, and mystery. Later generations transformed it into a scientific objective, a symbol of technological triumph during the Cold War. But now, slowly and almost quietly, the moon is acquiring another meaning entirely. Survival. The emotional atmosphere shifts here from forgotten history toward uncertain future. Earth no longer feels endlessly stable beneath civilization. Climate pressure intensifies, resources become increasingly contested. Political tension stretches across nations connected through fragile technological systems. Modern society appears advanced, yet beneath that advancement lies a growing sense of vulnerability, difficult to ignore completely. And against that backdrop, humanity has suddenly become obsessed with returning to the moon. Official explanations sound practical. Scientists discuss sustainable lunar bases capable of supporting long-term missions. Engineers design underground habitats protected from radiation and extreme temperatures. Governments invest billions into technologies focused not on temporary visits, but permanent human presence beyond Earth. The scale of ambition feels very different from Apollo. Humanity is no longer planning short journeys. It is planning continuity. The moon begins appearing less like a destination and more like infrastructure for civilization's future. Future lunar colonies could preserve scientific knowledge, maintain genetic archives, and support independent ecosystems capable of surviving beyond Earth itself. Some proposals even describe vast underground storage facilities protecting seeds, biological records, and cultural history against planetary catastrophe. The audience slowly realizes what that implies emotionally. Civilization may already be preparing for instability. It does not openly discuss. Most scientists and policymakers frame these projects positively, as natural expansion into space and preparation for eventual missions deeper into the solar system, and many genuinely believe that. Yet beneath those explanations, another atmosphere quietly forms. A sense of urgency, difficult to explain entirely through curiosity or scientific progress alone. Why now? Why did humanity suddenly move from decades of relative lunar silence to aggressive long-term colonization plans within such a short period of time? Governments, private corporations, military organizations, and international coalitions all accelerated moon-related technologies almost simultaneously. Launch systems improved rapidly. Lunar infrastructure planning expanded. Permanent habitation stopped sounding speculative and began sounding inevitable. The timing feels emotionally charged. The documentary never claims world leaders secretly know civilization is collapsing. There is no confirmed evidence of hidden disaster scenarios driving lunar expansion directly. Yet the emotional tension comes from contrast. Humanity once approached the moon with wonder and fear. Now it approaches with determination bordering on necessity. The moon starts feeling less like humanity's neighbor and more like a contingency plan. And perhaps that shift reveals something profound about civilization itself. For all modern technology, humanity remains deeply aware of its own fragility. Earth appears permanent from the perspective of ordinary life, but history tells another story entirely. Catastrophes happen. Civilizations disappear. Environmental systems shift unexpectedly. Cosmic impacts remain possible. Humanity evolved beneath a sky capable of changing suddenly and violently without permission or warning. The moon represents escape from some of those vulnerabilities. Underground lunar habitats could survive environmental collapse on Earth. Off-world colonies would protect human knowledge from planetary catastrophe. Permanent bases would ensure civilization itself continues, even if Earth experiences crisis beyond recovery. These ideas are often discussed calmly in scientific terms, yet emotionally they carry extraordinary weight. Because preparing another world for habitation means quietly acknowledging Earth may not always remain safe forever. The storytelling becomes more reflective now. Humanity stands at an unusual moment in its history. For the first time, civilization possesses technology capable of leaving its home planet permanently. Yet the emotional reason behind that desire feels increasingly complicated. Exploration and fear begin blending together. The moon remains silent above Earth while governments, scientists, and corporations race to establish presence there before anyone else. Beneath official narratives of innovation and discovery, another possibility lingers in the darkness. Perhaps civilization senses something unstable approaching, or perhaps humanity simply understands, consciously or not, that survival has always depended on adaptation. Every civilization that failed to adapt disappeared eventually. The moon may represent the next stage of that process, not merely exploration but migration. And if human beings truly intend to survive beyond Earth, another transformation becomes inevitable. Because the moment humanity permanently leaves its home world behind, it may begin changing psychologically in ways civilization has never experienced before. The greatest challenge of living on the moon may not be technological at all. It may be psychological. For centuries, humanity imagined space exploration as a triumph of engineering. Stronger rockets, smarter computers, safer habitats. Yet, the deeper civilization moves toward becoming a multi-world species, the more another reality begins emerging quietly beneath the machinery and ambition. Human beings were shaped by Earth. Every instinct, rhythm, emotion, and biological expectation evolved beneath blue skies, moving air, changing weather, oceans, forests, gravity, and sunlight filtered through atmosphere. The moon offers none of those things. It is silent beyond ordinary human comprehension. No wind moves there. No natural sound exists. Outside protected habitats, life disappears instantly into vacuum and radiation. And still, humanity prepares to stay there permanently. The emotional atmosphere becomes deeply reflective here. The audience is invited to imagine what daily life on the moon might actually feel like after the excitement of exploration fades. Artificial lights replace sunlight. Metal corridors replace forests and rivers. Earth itself hangs in the black sky above lunar settlements, like a distant memory glowing silently across space. Astronauts who traveled beyond Earth often described psychological experiences difficult to explain afterward. Some spoke about overwhelming loneliness. Others described profound shifts in perception while looking back at Earth from space. Borders disappeared. Nations vanished. Humanity itself began feeling fragile and temporary against the scale of cosmic darkness surrounding the planet. The moon intensified those feelings even further. Standing on its surface created a kind of emotional separation no human experience on Earth could fully prepare someone for. Home became distant enough to fit inside the sky itself. The entire history of civilization suddenly appeared small, suspended in darkness beyond reach. Now imagine generations born into that reality permanently. Children growing up beneath artificial lunar ceilings may never experience rain, oceans, forests, or natural horizons directly. Earth would exist for them almost the way the moon existed for ancient humanity. Visible every day, emotionally powerful, yet unreachable except for a small number of travelers. The psychological relationship between worlds would reverse completely. And with that reversal, humanity itself may begin changing. Religion could change first. Ancient belief systems formed beneath Earth's environment, seasons, and skies. Lunar civilization may develop entirely different spiritual ideas shaped by isolation, cosmic awareness, and permanent dependence on artificial habitats. Identity could change as well. Future generations born on the moon may no longer feel emotionally connected to Earth in the same way their ancestors once did. The phrase, home planet, might eventually sound historical rather than personal. That possibility creates profound existential tension, because it means humanity would stop being a single-world species psychologically as well as physically. Civilization itself could begin splitting into different experiences of reality shaped by different worlds. And perhaps the moon's emotional pull over humanity always hinted at this future subconsciously. For thousands of years, people stared at the moon with fascination difficult to explain rationally. Ancient myths transformed it into a symbol of longing, madness, destiny, and transformation. Poets described it as distant, yet intimate. Entire civilizations organized rituals around its cycles. Even modern audiences continue projecting mystery onto it instinctively. Maybe the attraction was never entirely symbolic. Maybe somewhere deep within human consciousness existed an awareness that the moon represented humanity's future long before technology made that future possible. The storytelling becomes softer and almost dreamlike now. Lunar colonies glow beneath transparent domes, while endless darkness stretches across the horizon outside. Families live entire lives underground, protected from radiation and vacuum by layers of ancient stone. Earth shines silently above them like a memory inherited from another age. The emotional contrast is extraordinary. Ancient humans once stood on Earth looking toward the moon with wonder, fear, and imagination. Future humans may stand on the moon looking back toward Earth with the exact same feelings. And perhaps that is the moment civilization truly changes forever. Not when humanity reaches another world physically, but when it begins feeling emotionally separated from the world that created it. Because once human psychology adapts fully to life beyond Earth, another possibility emerges naturally from the silence waiting ahead. The moon may eventually stop being humanity's outpost. It may become the center of an entirely new civilization altogether. At first, humanity will call the moon a colony, a research outpost, a survival project, a stepping stone toward deeper space exploration. But history suggests something far more profound eventually happens whenever human beings settle permanently in isolated environments. Over time, separation creates transformation, and the moon may transform humanity more completely than any frontier before it. The documentary drifts forward through centuries now, beyond modern politics and current technology. Lunar settlements expand beneath the surface, where ancient lava tubes become enormous underground cities protected from radiation and cosmic cold. Artificial ecosystems glow beneath transparent ceilings, while generations live entire lives without walking beneath Earth's atmosphere even once. The moon slowly stops feeling temporary. It becomes inhabited history. Children grow into adults inside low-gravity environments, shaping their bodies differently over generations. Architecture evolves according to lunar physics. Agriculture adapts to artificial ecosystems. Entire social structures emerge around the reality of living inside sealed habitats, surrounded by vacuum and endless darkness. And with enough time, identity itself begins changing. The first lunar settlers will still think of themselves as people from Earth, but their descendants may not. Earth becomes distant emotionally, transformed into an ancestral homeland, remembered more through stories and archived images than direct experience. Ancient oceans, forests, storms, and open skies may eventually feel almost mythological to people born beneath lunar stone. The emotional effect is both beautiful and deeply unsettling. Human civilization starts splitting across worlds. Language may evolve differently in isolated lunar communities. Religious beliefs shaped by Earth's natural cycles could slowly transform beneath artificial environments and permanent cosmic awareness. New myths would emerge. New philosophies. Future generations may interpret Earth the way ancient civilizations once interpreted paradise worlds or forgotten origins. The moon would no longer represent escape. It would represent beginning. The storytelling becomes expansive and almost dreamlike now. Massive underground cities stretch beneath crater fields, while artificial rivers move silently through carefully controlled ecosystems. Human beings travel across lunar plains beneath black skies where Earth glows overhead like a distant blue memory suspended in darkness. And somewhere inside that future lies another extraordinary possibility. Perhaps humanity is not unique in this process. Perhaps civilizations elsewhere in the universe once faced similar transitions long before humanity existed. A species emerges on a vulnerable world. Technology advances. Catastrophe threatens survival. Then, gradually, carefully, civilization spreads outward into nearby space, seeking continuity beyond planetary fragility. The moon suddenly feels connected to something much larger than human history alone. It becomes part of a cosmic pattern. Intelligent life may always begin trapped on unstable worlds, vulnerable to extinction. Expansion into neighboring systems may not represent ambition alone, but survival. Every advanced civilization could eventually reach a moment where remaining confined to one planet becomes too dangerous to sustain indefinitely. And perhaps that is why the moon has always carried such emotional gravity inside the human imagination. Not merely because it is beautiful or mysterious, but because somewhere instinctively humanity recognized it as transition. The place where civilization stops belonging entirely to one world and begins becoming something else. The psychological scale of that transformation is enormous. Human history until now has unfolded entirely beneath Earth's gravity, atmosphere, weather, and biological rhythms. Every empire, religion, war, and work of art emerged from one planet alone. But future lunar civilization may slowly drift away from those foundations until entirely new forms of culture emerge independent from Earth itself. One day, lunar citizens may look toward Earth with fascination rather than attachment. The relationship reverses completely. Ancient humans once stared upward at the moon, imagining mystery, destiny, and unreachable worlds. Future humans may stand beneath lunar ceilings, looking back toward Earth with exactly the same emotions. The documentary becomes quieter now. Humanity no longer appears trapped on a single, fragile planet beneath uncertain skies. Its future stretches outward between worlds connected by memory, distance, and transformation. The moon hangs suspended between past and future simultaneously, a relic of forgotten history, a sanctuary for survival, the birthplace of something new. And perhaps somewhere beyond the silence surrounding Earth and the moon, countless other civilizations once stood at the exact same threshold, wondering what they would become after leaving their first world behind forever. Because the deeper humanity moves into the future, the more another mystery begins emerging quietly from the darkness beyond the moon itself. What if humanity's story is only one small part of a much older cosmic history already unfolding across the universe? The deeper humanity investigates the moon, the more the mystery begins expanding beyond the moon itself. Questions that once seemed local suddenly become cosmic. Why does Earth possess such an unusually large and stabilizing moon? Why do certain conditions necessary for complex life appear balanced with extraordinary precision? And perhaps most unsettling of all, why does the universe repeatedly seem structured in ways that feel almost mathematically improbable? The documentary slowly leaves Earth behind now. The camera drifts outward through darkness filled with stars, while the narration becomes quieter and more contemplative. Across the observable universe, planets orbit suns inside narrow, habitable zones, where temperatures remain stable enough for liquid water and biological complexity. Gravitational relationships between moons, planets, and stars create delicate balances capable of lasting billions of years. A slight change in orbital distance can transform paradise into lifeless ice or burning desert. A minor shift in gravity can destabilize entire planetary systems. And yet Earth exists inside a remarkably stable arrangement. The moon returns to the center of the story here, but viewed through a much larger lens. Scientists already understand that the moon helps stabilize Earth's axial tilt, moderates tides, and influences environmental conditions tied closely to the development of life itself. Without the moon, Earth may have experienced violent climatic instability over immense periods of time. The emotional effect of that realization deepens once placed beside the larger universe, because intelligent life may depend on far more precision than humanity once believed. Some scientists describe this through the language of probability and cosmic selection. Out of countless worlds, a small number naturally develop conditions favorable to life. Humanity exists because it emerged on one of those rare planets. Others, however, feel something stranger beneath the mathematics. The universe often appears strangely fine-tuned for complexity itself. The narration carefully enters philosophical territory now, without fully committing to any single explanation. Ancient civilizations interpreted cosmic order as evidence of divine structure. Modern thinkers discuss simulation theory, anthropic principles, and the possibility of hidden intelligence shaping reality from beyond ordinary perception. None of these ideas are proven. Yet, they persist because human beings instinctively search for meaning whenever patterns appear too precise to ignore comfortably. The moon begins feeling different again through this perspective. No longer merely a neighboring object or geological anomaly, but part of a larger pattern woven throughout existence itself. Its unusual properties stop appearing isolated. They begin resembling components inside a carefully balanced system supporting life on Earth. And then the documentary introduces one of its most unsettling possibilities. What if advanced civilizations elsewhere in the universe intentionally shape planetary systems? Not through magic or impossible technology, but through engineering so advanced it becomes indistinguishable from natural cosmic evolution itself. A sufficiently advanced civilization might redirect asteroids, alter orbital mechanics, stabilize climates, or position moons strategically to encourage the emergence of life across immense spans of time. The idea sounds like science fiction at first, until the audience realizes humanity itself already dreams of planetary engineering on smaller scales. Modern scientists discuss terraforming Mars, redirecting asteroids, and altering environments to support future colonization. If humanity imagines such possibilities after only a few centuries of technological advancement, what might civilizations millions of years older become capable of achieving? The emotional atmosphere becomes vast and deeply unsettling now. The moon's strange characteristics no longer feel random, they feel intentional. Not necessarily because direct evidence confirms design, but because the possibility itself suddenly feels difficult to dismiss emotionally once enough patterns accumulate together. Perhaps intelligent life elsewhere once faced the same fragility humanity experiences now. Environmental instability, cosmic catastrophe, extinction risk. And perhaps, over unimaginable spans of time, advanced civilizations learned not merely to survive the universe, but to shape it carefully. The moon hangs above Earth silently, while that possibility settles into the audience's imagination. A stabilizing force, a cosmic safeguard, a structure whose true purpose humanity may not yet fully understand. And somewhere beyond the Earth-Moon system, scattered across countless stars hidden inside the darkness, there may exist other worlds balanced with the same strange precision. Other civilizations staring upward at their own moons, wondering whether the universe is random at all. Because once the idea of hidden intentionality enters the story, another question emerges naturally from the silence between stars. What if humanity has already encountered subtle evidence suggesting intelligence beyond Earth, without fully recognizing what it was seeing? The universe rarely speaks in ways humanity expects. People imagine first contact as something dramatic. Vast ships appearing above cities, clear messages transmitted across space. A sudden moment where uncertainty disappears and civilization changes forever overnight. Yet reality may not function that way at all. The signs, if they exist, may arrive quietly. Fragmented, hidden inside patterns humanity repeatedly notices and then dismisses. Across decades of space observation, astronomers detected strange signals that continue resisting complete explanation. Brief radio bursts arriving from distant regions of the cosmos with astonishing intensity. Repeating transmissions appearing and disappearing without obvious source. Unusual patterns buried inside, background noise so enormous and chaotic that certainty becomes almost impossible to achieve. Most of these phenomena eventually receive ordinary explanations. Some remain unresolved, and perhaps that distinction matters less emotionally than people assume. Because the documentary is not asking whether every unexplained signal represents intelligent life. Clearly, many do not. The deeper question is psychological. How does humanity respond when confronted by mysteries large enough to destabilize ordinary understanding? Usually with dismissal. Not necessarily out of dishonesty, but self-protection. Civilization depends heavily on stable interpretation of reality. Human beings move through daily life, assuming the universe is understandable, predictable, and emotionally manageable. Signals that threaten those assumptions often become uncomfortable long before they become meaningful scientifically. Uncertainty itself creates tension. The human mind instinctively tries to resolve quickly. The moon remains central to that tension throughout the story. It hangs above Earth like a familiar doorway into a much stranger cosmos. Humanity sees it every night, yet rarely considers how unusual existence itself begins feeling once the larger universe is examined carefully. Billions of stars fill the darkness beyond it. Billions of planets likely orbit those stars. The mathematical possibility of intelligence elsewhere grows increasingly difficult to ignore. And still, humanity continues behaving emotionally, as though isolation remains the safer assumption. The narration becomes quieter and more introspective now. Observatories scan deep space searching for patterns hidden inside noise, while scientists analyze signals too strange to classify immediately. Most anomalies disappear into ordinary explanation eventually. Yet some linger permanently at the edge of understanding, unresolved enough to survive inside public imagination for decades. The emotional weight comes from repetition. Again and again, humanity encounters hints, fragments, irregularities, and patterns difficult to interpret conclusively. Yet, instead of creating certainty, these moments often produce deeper ambiguity. The universe never speaks clearly enough for absolute confirmation. It whispers through probability, coincidence, and incomplete information. And perhaps that is why the mystery survives. The documentary introduces another unsettling possibility here. Humanity's greatest limitation may not be technology at all. It may be perception. Civilizations often fail to recognize transformative discoveries immediately, because understanding depends not only on evidence, but on psychological readiness. Ancient people once ignored meteorites because stones falling from the sky sounded impossible. Early scientists resisted ideas that challenged accepted models of reality. Entire revolutions in knowledge remained invisible until human perception changed enough to recognize them. What if the same process is happening now? The universe may already contain evidence of intelligence, design, or hidden structure subtle enough that humanity repeatedly overlooks it because the implications feel emotionally overwhelming. The moon itself becomes symbolic of that blindness. Humanity stared at it for thousands of years before recognizing it as another world entirely. What else might civilization currently misunderstand in the same way? The atmosphere grows increasingly reflective and existential. Space no longer feels empty. It feels layered with possibilities human beings cannot fully interpret yet. Strange signals drift through darkness, while observatories continue listening patiently across unimaginable distances. The moon circles Earth silently beneath all of it, acting almost like an intermediary between ordinary human experience and the vast unknown surrounding civilization completely. And somewhere inside that silence lives another realization difficult to escape. Perhaps the universe has never truly hidden its mysteries from humanity. Perhaps humanity simply does not yet recognize what it is seeing. The audience is left suspended inside uncertainty once again. Not fear exactly, but awareness. The sense that civilization may already stand inside patterns, signals, and unanswered questions too large for its current understanding to process comfortably. And after traveling through ancient myths, hidden histories, cosmic cycles, and lunar mystery itself, one final question slowly begins emerging from the darkness beyond the moon. What do all these mysteries ultimately reveal about humanity itself? After all the theories, anomalies, myths, hidden signals, and forgotten histories, the documentary arrives at a quieter place. Not an answer. A question. Why does humanity continue searching for hidden truths in the moon at all? The emotional atmosphere becomes still now, almost meditative. The moon hangs above Earth exactly as it has for countless generations, while human civilization changes beneath it endlessly. Ancient priests once watched it from stone temples. Sailors crossed dark oceans guided by its light. Astronauts stood beneath its silent skies looking back toward Earth with overwhelming emotion difficult to describe afterward. Different eras, different beliefs. Yet somehow the same fascination survives. Perhaps that persistence reveals something important about humanity itself. The search for mystery is rarely only about external discovery. People do not spend centuries imagining hidden worlds, celestial watchers, forgotten civilizations, and cosmic intelligence merely because they enjoy uncertainty. Beneath every theory surrounding the moon lives something deeper and more personal. Loneliness. Human beings are conscious enough to recognize how small they are inside the universe. The stars stretch outward beyond comprehension, while entire galaxies drift silently through darkness for billions of years. Against that scale, ordinary human life can begin feeling painfully temporary. The moon occupies a unique emotional space because it exists directly between humanity and that cosmic silence. Close enough to feel intimate, distant enough to remain unknowable. The documentary slowly reflects on how every civilization projected meaning onto the moon in its own way. Ancient cultures saw gods and omens. Scientists saw geology and orbital mechanics. Conspiracy theorists saw hidden structures and suppressed truths. Future civilizations may see survival, transformation, or the beginning of humanity's expansion beyond Earth. But beneath all those interpretations lives the same desire: to understand existence itself. The moon becomes symbolic not because it necessarily hides answers, but because it reflects the human refusal to accept meaninglessness comfortably. People search for hidden layers beneath reality because consciousness naturally seeks connection, pattern, and purpose. The universe feels too vast, too silent, and too mysterious for the human mind to experience without asking questions endlessly. And perhaps the questions matter more than the answers ever could. That realization changes the emotional direction of the documentary completely. Earlier chapters pursued evidence, anomalies, and possibilities. Here, the narration gently steps away from certainty altogether. The audience is invited to sit inside uncertainty rather than escape it, because mystery itself may be part of the human experience. The moon remains silent regardless of what humanity believes about it. It does not confirm ancient myths. It does not deny scientific theories. It simply exists above Earth, while generations project fear, wonder, hope, and imagination onto its surface continuously. And perhaps that silence is why it feels so powerful emotionally. The moon never forces humanity toward one interpretation. Instead, it acts almost like a mirror, reflecting the psychological state of each era that observes it. Civilizations afraid of chaos imagine warnings there. Civilizations seeking gods imagine divinity there. Modern civilization, surrounded by technology and cosmic uncertainty, imagines hidden intelligence, forgotten history, and suppressed truths. The storytelling becomes softer now. Oceans reflect moonlight beneath empty skies, while cities sleep unaware of the questions still drifting through human consciousness. Somewhere, someone looks upward searching for meaning exactly as people did thousands of years ago. Nothing about that instinct has changed. And maybe it never will. The audience slowly realizes the documentary was never only about whether the moon contains ancient structures, hidden civilizations, or unexplained phenomena. Those mysteries remain unresolved intentionally. The deeper story has always been about humanity confronting the unknown itself, because every unanswered question about the moon ultimately becomes a question about human existence. Why are we here? Are we alone? What has humanity forgotten? What waits beyond ordinary understanding? The moon survives inside the imagination because it keeps those questions alive. And then, quietly, the final emotional reveal of the chapter arrives. Perhaps the moon's greatest secret is not hidden beneath rock, dust, or underground caverns at all. Perhaps the real mystery exists inside the human mind itself, the part of consciousness that continues searching the darkness for meaning, even when certainty never arrives. And as the documentary moves toward its final revelations, the moon remains suspended above Earth exactly as it always has, silent, watching, waiting for humanity to decide what the mystery truly means. After everything humanity has learned about the universe, the moon should feel ordinary by now. Astronauts walked across its surface decades ago. Satellites mapped its craters in extraordinary detail. Scientists studied its geology, measured its gravity, and analyzed rocks carried back to Earth. Modern civilization understands more about the moon than any generation before it. And yet, the mystery remains. Not loudly, quietly, like something unresolved hidden beneath familiarity itself. The emotional atmosphere slows dramatically here. The documentary returns to stillness after the vast cosmic scale of earlier chapters. The moon hangs above Earth exactly as it always has, while humanity continues circling the same questions generation after generation. Why does it still feel strange? Why do theories, myths, and speculation continue attaching themselves to the moon more intensely than almost any other object in the sky? Perhaps the answer has less to do with astronomy than psychology. Throughout history, certain ideas became uncomfortable not necessarily because they were false, but because they threatened stability. Human civilization depends heavily on shared assumptions about reality. People need frameworks explaining who they are, where they came from, and how the world functions. When discoveries challenge those frameworks deeply enough, resistance appears almost automatically. The pattern repeats constantly across history. Ancient societies resisted the idea that Earth moved around the sun because it shattered humanity's assumed position at the center of existence. Later, evolutionary theory triggered fear because it altered how civilization understood life itself. Every major shift in knowledge forced humanity to confront a painful realization. Reality may not match emotional expectation. The moon occupies a unique place inside that psychological landscape. It feels close enough to belong to human life directly, yet distant enough to remain emotionally unreachable. People see it constantly, but never experience it naturally. It exists somewhere between intimacy and alienation, familiarity and impossibility. And perhaps that tension is exactly why lunar mystery feels forbidden. Not forbidden officially, but emotionally. The narration becomes softer and more reflective now. Modern civilization often presents itself as rational and open to evidence, yet human beings still instinctively avoid questions capable of destabilizing their emotional security. The issue is not intelligence. It is comfort. Certainty creates psychological stability. Deep uncertainty threatens identity itself. The moon quietly disrupts certainty. Its anomalies remain unresolved. Ancient myths surrounding it survive across cultures. Modern speculation refuses to disappear entirely, despite scientific advancement. Every attempt to reduce the moon into something ordinary somehow leaves a residue of mystery behind. The audience slowly begins sensing another possibility. Perhaps humanity unconsciously avoids certain lunar questions because the implications feel too large emotionally. Not necessarily because the answers involve extraterrestrials or hidden civilizations, but because truly confronting uncertainty changes how people experience reality itself. The moon becomes symbolic of a boundary. On one side exists comfort, accepted history, stable narratives, predictable explanations. On the other side exists awareness that civilization may understand far less about itself and the universe than it prefers to admit openly. That transition feels psychologically dangerous. Because once people begin questioning one foundational assumption deeply enough, other assumptions begin unraveling beside it. The moon acts almost like a doorway into that process, a familiar object capable of awakening existential uncertainty far larger than itself. And silence becomes central to the storytelling now. Not empty silence, heavy silence. The kind that appears when human beings stand close to questions they are not fully prepared to answer honestly. Ancient people projected gods and celestial warnings onto the moon because mystery demanded meaning. Modern civilization projects hidden technologies, suppressed truths, and cosmic speculation for the same reason. Different language, same psychological instinct. The documentary gently suggests that forbidden knowledge may not always be actively hidden by institutions alone. Sometimes societies hide things from themselves unconsciously because certain possibilities create emotional instability, too difficult to integrate comfortably. And perhaps that explains why the moon still feels different from every other object humanity studies. It does not simply challenge science. It challenges identity. The audience is left suspended inside that realization quietly, while the moon continues drifting above Earth unchanged. No answers emerge from the silence, only awareness. The sense that some questions remain difficult not because evidence is missing, but because humanity fears what understanding itself might demand psychologically. And if civilizations instinctively avoid dangerous truths to preserve stability, then another darker question naturally begins, emerging from the silence surrounding history itself. What happens when institutions decide certain knowledge should remain controlled forever? Every civilization tells stories about reality. Some are scientific, some religious, some political. Others are so deeply woven into ordinary life that people stop recognizing them as narratives at all. Human beings rarely experience reality directly in its full complexity. Instead, societies organize understanding into structures, simple enough to maintain order, identity, and stability across millions of people at once. And throughout history, disruptive knowledge has always threatened those structures. The documentary becomes quieter and more atmospheric here. Ancient libraries burn beneath dark skies, while forbidden books disappear into silence. Philosophers speak ideas too dangerous for their era and are dismissed, ignored, or condemned. Scientists challenge accepted understanding and encounter resistance long before eventual acceptance changes civilization forever. The pattern repeats endlessly across history, not necessarily because institutions are evil, but because large societies instinctively protect coherence. Stability depends on shared agreement about how reality works. When new discoveries arrive too suddenly or challenge identity too deeply, resistance becomes almost inevitable. The Earth was once believed to stand motionless at the center of creation. Disease was once interpreted through superstition rather than biology. Entire civilizations rejected ideas later considered obvious, simply because the implications felt emotionally destabilizing at the time. The audience slowly realizes the documentary is not arguing for hidden conspiracies in the simplistic sense. The deeper tension involves something more subtle and far more powerful. Human societies naturally filter information through systems designed to preserve predictability. Governments do this. Religions do this. Scientific institutions do this. Even ordinary individuals do this psychologically. The moon becomes the perfect symbol of that process because it exists directly between accepted understanding and unresolved mystery. Humanity sees it every night, studies it scientifically, and treats it as familiar. Yet serious examination of its deeper anomalies, myths, and psychological effects often remains pushed quietly toward the margins of mainstream thought. Not because the questions are meaningless, but because they are difficult to integrate comfortably. The narration grows increasingly reflective now. Modern civilization often imagines itself completely open to truth wherever evidence leads. Yet people still instinctively prefer explanations, preserving emotional stability over possibilities, creating existential uncertainty. Most individuals do not consciously reject difficult ideas. They simply stop asking certain questions before those questions become disruptive enough to challenge deeper assumptions. And perhaps that is the most effective form of control. Not censorship. Expectation. The audience is invited to sit with that realization slowly. The greatest influence over human perception may not involve hiding information entirely. It may involve shaping what civilization considers reasonable to question in the first place. Once people believe certain ideas belong only to fantasy, paranoia, or fringe speculation, curiosity itself begins policing its own boundaries automatically. The moon quietly exposes that tension. Humanity accepts its presence completely, while rarely confronting how strange it truly is. The anomalies remain known, but emotionally compartmentalized. Ancient myths survive, but are separated carefully from scientific conversation. Speculative questions become socially uncomfortable long before they are fully examined. And perhaps civilization functions this way because complete uncertainty is psychologically difficult to endure. The documentary does not portray scientists, governments, or media institutions as coordinated villains concealing absolute truth. Reality is more complicated and more human than that. Large systems prioritize order naturally because chaos threatens collective stability. Yet unintended consequences emerge from that instinct. Certain mysteries remain unexplored, not because they lack significance, but because they resist simple incorporation into accepted reality. The emotional atmosphere becomes increasingly dreamlike and unsettling now. Cities glow beneath moonlight, while billions of people move through carefully structured versions of reality built from education, culture, media, and inherited belief. Most never question the foundations beneath those structures deeply because daily life leaves little room for existential uncertainty. But the moon remains above all of it. Silent, visible to everyone, ignored in strangely specific ways. And perhaps that is why lunar mystery feels so psychologically powerful. It represents the boundary where collective agreement begins weakening. A place where humanity senses something unfinished beneath accepted understanding, but hesitates to look directly at it for too long. Because once certain questions are asked seriously enough, the stability of ordinary reality itself begins shifting. And after centuries of avoiding, filtering, and softening uncertainty, another possibility slowly emerges from the darkness surrounding the moon. What happens if humanity finally confronts the unknown directly instead of turning away from it once again? There may come a moment when humanity finally understands. Not gradually, not comfortably, but all at once. The documentary becomes deeply still here, as though the story itself is holding its breath. After centuries of myths, speculation, scientific discovery, secrecy, and unanswered questions, the narration no longer asks whether hidden truths exist. Instead, it asks something more unsettling. What happens to civilization when uncertainty suddenly ends? Human society is built upon shared assumptions about reality. People wake each morning believing they understand the basic structure of existence well enough to move through life without existential collapse. History feels stable. Human origins feel known. The universe feels distant and mostly silent. But one undeniable discovery connected to the moon could fracture that stability instantly. The narration carefully avoids revealing a specific answer. That uncertainty remains essential. Instead, the audience is invited to imagine the emotional impact itself. Future astronauts descend beneath the lunar surface into ancient caverns untouched for billions of years. Their lights move slowly across black stone, while radio transmissions echo softly back toward Earth. Then, something impossible appears. Perhaps a structure. Perhaps evidence of intelligence. Perhaps proof humanity misunderstood its own history completely. The exact nature of the discovery matters less than the reaction unfolding afterward. Silence comes first. Not dramatic panic. Disbelief. The human mind instinctively resists information too large to integrate immediately. Scientists stare at impossible images without speaking. Governments hesitate before releasing confirmation publicly. Religious leaders search for meaning. Ordinary people continue daily routines, unaware that reality itself may already have changed permanently somewhere beneath the moon. Then the realization spreads. Humanity is not what it believed. The emotional atmosphere becomes overwhelming and strangely intimate at the same time. Crowded cities continue glowing beneath ordinary moonlight, while millions of people slowly confront the possibility that civilization stands at the edge of irreversible transformation. Some react with fear, others with wonder. Many refuse to believe the evidence entirely because accepting it would require rebuilding their understanding of existence from the ground upward. And perhaps that reaction is inevitable. Every great shift in human understanding triggered resistance before acceptance. Yet this discovery would feel different from anything before it because it would not merely alter scientific models. It would alter identity itself. Questions once considered philosophical suddenly become immediate and personal. Are humans alone? How much history was misunderstood? What else remains hidden? The moon transforms emotionally once again. No longer mysterious because answers are absent, but mysterious because answers have finally arrived. The silence surrounding it changes character completely. What once felt speculative now feels unfinished in another way, as though humanity suddenly realizes it has been standing beside an enormous truth without recognizing it fully. And the most unsettling possibility emerges quietly beneath everything else. Humanity may already stand very close to such a discovery technologically. Modern lunar programs continue accelerating. Underground mapping improves. Future missions plan to investigate regions never explored during Apollo. Artificial intelligence analyzes anomalies with increasing precision. The distance between humanity and deeper lunar discovery shrinks constantly. The moon no longer feels distant from revelation. It feels imminent. The storytelling becomes almost dreamlike now. Future astronauts stand motionless inside ancient lunar darkness, while Earth hangs above the horizon beyond them. The blue planet glows silently in space exactly as it always has. Oceans still move. Nations still argue. People still fall asleep beneath moonlight, unaware of how fragile certainty truly was all along. Yet something irreversible has changed. The audience feels the emotional weight, not through dramatic action, but through stillness. A civilization confronting truth large enough to transform every field of human thought simultaneously. Science, religion, philosophy, history, and identity suddenly begin rearranging themselves around a discovery too profound to contain within ordinary language. And perhaps the greatest revelation is not the discovery itself. It is the realization that humanity always sensed something unfinished about the moon, long before evidence appeared. The documentary closes the chapter with one final image. A lone human figure standing on the lunar surface after the truth becomes known, staring toward Earth suspended in endless darkness. The planet looks the same, but the silence afterward feels completely different. And as humanity finally approaches the edge of understanding, the final movement of the story begins quietly emerging from the darkness beyond certainty itself. Night falls slowly across Earth. Cities begin glowing beneath darkness, while oceans reflect pale silver light across moving water. Deserts cool beneath empty skies untouched by sound. Forests drift quietly in the wind, while billions of people sleep without noticing the ancient object hanging above them, exactly as it has for all of human history. The moon remains there, silent, watching. After all the questions explored throughout the documentary, the story becomes smaller now in the most important way possible. The focus shifts away from hidden structures, cosmic theories, forgotten catastrophes, and lunar anomalies. Instead, it returns to humanity itself, to ordinary human experience beneath moonlight stretching back across thousands of years. The emotional atmosphere becomes calm and meditative. Empires rose beneath the moon. Ancient kings looked upward before battles, while travelers crossed oceans guided by lunar light alone. Religious rituals unfolded according to lunar cycles. Lovers stood beneath the same glowing sky centuries apart, without realizing how deeply connected they were through that silent presence overhead. Human history unfolded beneath the moon continuously. Every discovery, every fear, every prayer, every war. The documentary gently drifts through those moments now. Ancient fires burn outside forgotten temples while priests track lunar eclipses with careful attention. Sailors stare upward from black oceans, where moonlight becomes the only visible path through darkness. Early astronomers sketch the lunar surface long before telescopes reveal its true landscape. Children fall asleep beneath windows, where pale light spills quietly across the floor. The moon shaped human emotion long before humanity understood astronomy. And perhaps that influence mattered more than people realize. For thousands of years, The moon existed as a permanent reminder that mystery surrounded civilization completely. Ancient humans did not know what the moon was, yet they lived beside it every night. That tension between familiarity and uncertainty entered mythology, religion, poetry, and psychology itself. The moon became associated with madness, transformation, romance, death, longing, isolation, and transcendence, because it carried emotional weight impossible to separate from ordinary human consciousness. Even now, modern civilization reacts to it instinctively. People still stop and stare at full moons without fully understanding why. Artists continue painting it. Writers continue filling stories with lunar imagery. Scientists study it rationally, while simultaneously feeling something older and more emotional beneath that curiosity. Perhaps because the moon quietly shaped the human mind across civilization itself. The narration introduces a subtle realization here. Maybe the moon's greatest influence was never physical alone, not tides, gravity, eclipses, or orbital stability. Perhaps its deepest effect came from existing permanently above humanity as a visible symbol of the unknown. Every civilization needed to confront that mystery eventually. And in doing so, humanity learned to imagine beyond immediate survival. The moon encouraged myth, philosophy, exploration, and cosmic curiosity, simply because it existed beyond reach for so long. People projected fears and hopes onto it, because consciousness naturally reaches toward what it cannot fully understand. The emotional tone becomes increasingly hypnotic now. Earth turns slowly beneath moonlight, while generations rise and disappear across history. Entire civilizations vanish into dust, yet the moon remains unchanged above them all. Ancient questions survive inside modern minds, almost intact. What exists beyond human understanding? Are we alone? Why does mystery feel so necessary? The documentary no longer pushes toward answers. Instead, it allows uncertainty itself to become peaceful. The moon does not need to reveal hidden civilizations or impossible truths to remain extraordinary. Its power may come precisely from the fact that it never fully resolves itself emotionally. It stays unfinished. A permanent invitation toward wonder. And perhaps that is why humanity will never stop returning to it, imagining stories about it, or searching its surface for hidden meaning. The moon quietly reminds civilization that existence contains layers beyond certainty, that no matter how advanced technology becomes, some part of human consciousness will always continue searching the darkness for understanding. The audience is left resting inside that realization softly. Oceans continue reflecting moonlight. Cities continue glowing beneath silent skies. Somewhere, someone looks upward tonight, exactly as countless generations once did before them. And above it all, the moon continues illuminating more than Earth's surface alone. It illuminates the human mind itself. Humanity has always moved toward mystery. Before maps existed, people crossed oceans without knowing what waited beyond the horizon. Before telescopes revealed galaxies, civilizations stared upward, imagining worlds hidden inside the stars. Even now, surrounded by technology and information, human beings continue searching beneath history, beneath consciousness, and beyond Earth itself for answers that never seem fully complete. Perhaps that instinct is older than civilization. Perhaps it is part of consciousness itself. The documentary becomes quieter here, almost weightless. The moon hangs above Earth exactly as it did at the beginning of the story, unchanged while humanity transformed beneath it across generations. Ancient people saw gods there. Priests and astronomers tracked omens and eclipses with fear and reverence. Later, scientists looked upward and saw geology, gravity, and orbital mechanics. Modern conspiracy theories transformed the moon into a symbol of secrecy, hidden structures, and forbidden knowledge. Future civilizations may see something entirely different. Survival. Expansion. Origins. The emotional realization arrives slowly. The moon changes meaning with every generation because humanity changes beneath it continuously. Each era projects its deepest fears, hopes, obsessions, and uncertainties onto the same silent object hanging in the sky. And perhaps that is the moon's greatest power. Not what it hides physically, but what it reveals psychologically. The narration drifts across human history once more. Ancient fires burn outside stone temples, while storytellers describe celestial beings descending from the heavens. Centuries later, astronomers sketch craters by candlelight, searching for order within the cosmos. Modern engineers design lunar colonies, while philosophers question whether humanity is alone in existence itself. Different civilizations, different interpretations, yet always the same instinct: to search beyond certainty. The documentary gently suggests that mystery survives not because knowledge is impossible, but because the unknown gives meaning to exploration itself. A fully explained universe might become emotionally empty in ways difficult for human consciousness to endure. Questions create movement. Curiosity creates civilization. The search for understanding pushes humanity across oceans, through scientific revolutions, and eventually toward the stars. The moon became the perfect symbol of that process, because it remains emotionally unreachable even after humanity physically touched it. Astronauts walked there, yet the mystery survived. Satellites mapped it, yet uncertainty remained. Science explained countless details, yet people still stare upward, feeling something unfinished about it. The audience slowly understands the documentary was never only about hidden lunar structures, forgotten catastrophes, or cosmic intelligence. Those possibilities mattered because they reflected deeper human needs. The need for meaning. The need for connection. The refusal to believe existence is entirely closed, fully solved, or emotionally complete. The storytelling slows further now. Silence becomes part of the experience itself. Oceans move beneath moonlight while empty roads stretch through sleeping cities. Somewhere tonight, someone looks upward, asking questions they cannot fully explain even to themselves. Why does the moon feel familiar and strange at the same time? Why does mystery feel necessary? Why does uncertainty continue pulling humanity forward instead of driving it away? Perhaps because human beings are not designed merely to survive reality. They are designed to search it. The moon functions almost like a mirror, reflecting the psychological condition of every era observing it. Fearful civilizations imagined warnings there. Romantic civilizations imagined beauty there. Technological civilizations imagined hidden systems and secret knowledge there. Future civilizations may imagine destiny there. And none of those interpretations are entirely wrong, because each reveals something truthful about humanity itself. The emotional atmosphere becomes deeply calm now, almost dreamlike. The audience is no longer pushed toward revelation or dramatic conclusion. Instead, they are invited to live beside uncertainty, peacefully. The moon remains suspended above Earth, carrying every human interpretation simultaneously, while belonging fully to none of them. Perhaps that is why mystery can never disappear completely. As long as humanity exists, consciousness will continue reaching toward what remains just beyond full understanding. The moon simply became one of the oldest and most powerful symbols of that endless search. And after everything explored throughout the documentary, one final realization quietly remains. The story was never really about solving the moon. It was about understanding why humanity keeps searching the darkness for meaning, even when certainty never fully arrives. And as the final chapter approaches its closing moment, the same question from the beginning slowly returns beneath the silence one last time. The moon remains where it has always been, suspended above Earth in perfect silence, while oceans move beneath it, and civilizations rise and disappear across history. At the beginning of this journey, it seemed familiar, ordinary. A pale object hanging in the night sky, accepted so completely that most people rarely questioned it deeply anymore. But now it feels different. After everything explored throughout the documentary, the moon no longer appears simple. Ancient myths linger around it differently. Scientific anomalies feel heavier. Forgotten catastrophes, hidden histories, cosmic patterns, and unanswered signals all seem to orbit the same silent presence above humanity continuously. And still, no final answer arrives. The emotional atmosphere becomes almost weightless here. The documentary no longer moves toward revelation or dramatic conclusion. Instead, it returns gently to uncertainty itself. The audience drifts above Earth at night, while moonlight reflects across clouds, oceans, forests, and sleeping cities, exactly as it has for thousands of years. The central questions return quietly one last time. Is the moon entirely natural? Does it preserve forgotten history humanity no longer remembers? Could something beneath its surface remain hidden, simply because civilization was never psychologically prepared to confront it fully? Was the moon always meant to shape Earth in some larger way humanity still barely understands? The narration never answers directly. Because perhaps the moon's greatest power has always been remaining unresolved. Human beings often believe they want certainty, yet complete certainty can quietly diminish wonder. Mystery keeps consciousness moving forward. Questions inspire exploration. Uncertainty drives civilizations across oceans, into space, beneath history, and beyond accepted understanding. The unknown is not simply absence of knowledge. It is possibility itself. The moon survives inside human imagination because it never fully closes. Ancient people imagined gods there because mystery demanded meaning. Scientists searched for explanations because unanswered questions demanded investigation. Future generations will likely project entirely new interpretations onto the same silent surface, and perhaps all of them will contain fragments of truth. The documentary reflects softly on another possibility now. Some truths may not arrive through sudden revelation at all. Humanity often imagines discovery as a dramatic event where uncertainty disappears instantly. Yet, history suggests understanding unfolds slowly across generations. Ideas once dismissed eventually become ordinary. Mysteries that felt impossible slowly reveal deeper layers over centuries rather than moments. Perhaps humanity still stands near the beginning of understanding rather than the end. The moon may not have hidden its secrets deliberately. Humanity may simply not yet know how to recognize what it is seeing. That realization settles quietly across the final moments of the story. The moon continues hanging above Earth unchanged, while civilization keeps evolving beneath it. Ancient observers once looked upward, asking questions that modern humanity still cannot fully answer. Future generations may continue asking those same questions long after current civilizations disappear into history themselves. And maybe that continuity matters more than certainty ever could, because the search itself became part of what makes humanity human. The storytelling slows almost to stillness now. No music, no dramatic revelation. Only Earth turning slowly beneath pale lunar light, while billions of lives unfold beneath the same ancient sky. Somewhere, someone looks upward tonight, feeling the same mixture of wonder and uncertainty that humans felt thousands of years ago. Nothing about that instinct has changed. The moon remains emotionally unreachable, no matter how much science advances. Astronauts touched it, satellites mapped it. Future colonies may one day spread beneath its surface. Yet the mystery survives because the moon represents something larger than geology or astronomy alone. It represents the boundary between what humanity knows and what humanity still longs to understand. And perhaps that boundary can never disappear completely. The final image lingers quietly. The moon suspended above Earth exactly as it appeared at the beginning. Watching, waiting, unchanged. Its silence still unbroken after all of human history. And as the screen slowly fades into darkness, one final possibility remains suspended inside the audience's mind long after the documentary ends. Maybe the moon was never meant to give humanity answers. Maybe it was meant to keep humanity searching forever.